American Comics, opening sign in Accelerator. Chapter 101 Fighting with Ghost Rider. Ghost Rider rode the motorcycle to a sideways drift, and at the same time, the chain with hellfire attached to his hand was drawn. Levis took a half step to the side with a calm expression on his face, and the crimson chain was slapped on the ground while rubbing. I saw that a gully was whipped out by the iron chain on the ground in an instant, and what was even more terrifying was that the crimson magma flowed in the gully in an instant. Tilda, after you destroy the road, will you lose money? Levis teased with his arms crossed. Ghost Rider didn't speak, and waved the chain in his hand and swept it sideways. However, the iron chain attached to the fire of hell dared to swipe directly from his body, and Levis still stood there intact. Seeing this scene, Ghost Rider was stunned for a moment. This was the first time he couldn't hit anyone. Ghost Rider didn't believe in evil, and once again swung the chain and kept whipping, but in a short while, the ground was whipped into several ravines. 507. However, Levis still stood with his arms crossed, watching Ghost Rider's performance with a smile on his face. In fact, he just used the super high speed to evade the chain attack, and then came back. Because the speed is so fast, it makes it appear as if there is no movement. Vice, what the hell is this monster? Melinda finally came to her senses, looking at Ghost Rider with a serious face, and the gun in her hand was already ready. I heard that there was a legend in Mexico. It seems to be called Ghost Rider. The little naughty frowned and thought, Ghost Rider? It's actually Ghost Rider? Melinda obviously knew the legend of Ghost Rider, but she didn't expect that they had just met here. You guessed it right. This guy is Ghost Rider. At this time, Levis leisurely turned back and explained. When Ghost Rider saw that he despised him so much, he was instantly furious, and even the fire of hell on the skull was a little more vigorous. He looked at Melinda and Little Naughty. You both are guilty, Judge. Ghost Rider said that he gave up Levis, and instead swung the crimson iron chain towards Little Naughty and Melinda. You can't afford to play? Levis was a little angry when he saw that he actually wanted to play with Xiao. I saw that he came to the two of them in an instant, and caught Ghost Rider's chain of hellfire with one hand. With the two super abilities of vector operation and flame control, the mere hellfire can't do any damage to him at all. How is that possible? Ghost Rider was a little shocked when he saw that he actually grabbed his own chain, and he was still unscathed. Because so far no one has touched his hellfire unscathed. Nothing is impossible. I'll teach you a trick, Levis said, shaking his arm slightly, and the chain in his hand tied Ghost Rider in an instant. Immediately after, he twitched hard, and the next moment Ghost Rider was thrown to the other side by the chain, and then smashed to the ground. The ground was immediately smashed into a hole. However, before it was over, Levis kept swinging the chain, and Ghost Rider kept being smashed to both sides. This violent scene shocked both Little Naughty and Melinda. After picking up Ghost Rider and smashing it hard, Levis finally relieved his anger, and he didn't worry that Ghost Rider would be smashed to death. Anyway, this guy has regenerative healing factor. After smashing Ghost Rider into the ground again, he loosened the chain and walked over. It really is the regenerative healing factor. It's perverted. I saw that Ghost Rider's clothes had become tattered, and all the bones were exposed. It can be seen that he has been smashed and broken a lot of bones, but in such a short time he has recovered. It was at this time the fire of hell on Ghost Rider suddenly burst into flames and burned directly to him in front of him. Do you still want to resist? Levis was a little surprised. He was just about to use the vector operation, but he didn't expect a red flame to appear in his palm. The fire of hell dares to provoke me. The red flames turned into human figures, and it turned out that the phoenix ran out. As soon as she waved her hand, the phoenix flames filled the sky and burned towards the fire of hell. Generally speaking, it is impossible for a flame to cause damage to another flame, but this scene is a bit shocking because the flames of the phoenix actually directly swallowed the fire of hell. The fire of hell was swallowed up, and Ghost Rider cried out in pain. Seeing that Ghost Rider was about to be killed by Phoenix, Levis quickly took her back. Hey, don't suck him dry, or his skeleton will fall apart. Phoenix struggled angrily and was unwilling to be taken back. She just had a good time. As long as she can replenish the power of the Phoenix, she is sure to escape from this human body. Go back to me obediently. Next time I have a chance, I will give you enough, Levis said, using vector operation with all his strength, and the Phoenix was suppressed in an instant. Vice, how is it? What happened just now? The Little Naughty ran over worriedly. It's okay. It's just that Phoenix ran out a little disobediently. Levis smiled and waved his hand. It is estimated that it was because of the awareness of the fire of hell that the Phoenix suddenly ran out. The Little Naughty was still a little worried after hearing the words. After all, this Phoenix ran out when he said he ran out. What if they ran out when they were doing something adults did? Definitely. In fact, she doesn't have to worry about this issue at all. After all, when there is no battle, Levi's suppression of Phoenix is 100%. Never let her run away. Seeing this, Melinda thoughtfully opened the communicator and contacted Nick Fury. Melinda, have you arrived yet? Nick Fury's voice came over the phone. No, Chief. We haven't fought Phil Coulson yet. In fact, we met Ghost Rider on the road, and also had a fight with him," Melinda explained in detail. "What? Encountered Ghost Rider? Are you not injured?" Nick Fury was surprised, but he did not expect that they would encounter the legendary Ghost Rider. "There are records about Ghost Rider 4.1, they definitely have SHIELD, but Ghost Rider has not appeared for a long time. Don't worry, Director, Ghost Rider has been dealt with by it, and we are not injured," Melinda Huey reported. "That's good. You hand over the phone to—" "Yes," Melinda agreed, and then handed the phone to Levi's. "Director?" Levi's answered the phone suspiciously. "Vice, you have to be careful. Since Ghost Rider came to the door, I'm afraid things won't be so simple." 39. "Oh? Director, do you know what to write?" Levi's was a little curious, listening to Nick Fury's words. Obviously he knew something. "This is a secret, I can't say. In short, be careful." Nick Fury didn't mean to explain. Chapter 102. The contract of Street Van Gonzalo is in hand. Cut. Forget it. Levi's was a little unhappy when he saw him being secretive, and threw the phone to Melinda beside him. Melinda could only helplessly smile when she saw this. Ignoring Chief Braised Egg, Levi's turned and came to Ghost Rider. "Hello, are you alright?" Ghost Rider didn't speak but struggled unconsciously, as if he had experienced something painful. "He doesn't look like he's okay." The little naughty beside him is powerless to complain. "How can it seem like he's okay?" "Ah. Well then." Levi's was a little speechless. Looking at Ghost Rider's appearance, he would definitely not die, but because he had absorbed too much power, he would definitely be very weak. But it doesn't have much to do with him. What he cares about is what ability signing in Ghost Rider will bring him. Ding. "Did the host sign into Ghost Rider?" "Yes." Ding. "Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Hellfire, with 100 experience points." 22. Hellfire can burn both soul and body. Definitely, it doesn't do much for Levi's. After all, he already has the power of the Phoenix. The power of the Phoenix can also be called the Flame of the Phoenix, and it is not known how many grades higher than the Fire of Hell. Definitely, Hellfire also has its role, that is to make the locomotive or car shapeshifting. Are there any cool motorcycles with Hellfire attached? The dignified Fire of Hell has been reduced to the point where he can only dress up the car. If Ghost Rider knew it, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. "What is this guy going to do? Do you want to kill it?" the little naughty next to him asked after looking at Ghost Rider. "Kill? Not that." Levi's shook his head. The host of Ghost Rider, Johnny, is not a very wicked person. In addition to destroying public properties everywhere, the people he kills are also the most evil people, and not only can't kill him, but also let him go. Levi's wants to get the contract of Saint Van Gonzalo. He must find the previous Ghost Rider, and he has almost forgotten where the previous Ghost Rider is. So I can only follow Ghost Rider to find it. Thinking of this, Levi's smiled. "Okay, leave him alone. Let's find a place to rest." "Just keep him here?" Melinda frowned a little suspiciously. "If you don't stay here, are you going to take him home?" Levi's asked with a shrug. After speaking, he and the little naughty returned to the car. "Hurry up and drive. Let's go to the next town to find a place to rest." 35. Seeing that Melinda was still stunned, he urged. Soon the car was on the road again. After a while, he came to the town. 3 people opened 2 rooms at the same time. Shortly after they left, Ghost Rider also woke up, and seeing that there were still people staring here not far away, he immediately rode his motorcycle and left. Back at his repair shop, Ghost Rider finally breathed a sigh of relief. What he didn't know, however, was that everything he was in was already under Levi's telepathic watch. How strong is LV5's telepathy? Even without relying on the brainwave intensifier, it can cover most of the world, so Ghost Rider's every move is under his control. The next day, after a morning exercise with a little naughty, Levi's was ready to go and get the Street Van Gonzalian contract back. Using telepathy to check Ghost Rider's location, he was with the old knight. "It should be because of a serious injury, so I want to ask the old knight for advice." "That's right." The corners of Levi's mouth twitched slightly, and then he used the space move to disappear into the room. When he reappeared, he was already in front of a log cabin in a cemetery. Levi stepped forward and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" A somewhat old voice came from inside the room. "Open the door, the community sends warmth," Levi said without hesitation. After a long silence, a sigh came from inside the house. "The door is unlocked, come in." Levi's pushed open the door and walked in, only to see a pale-haired, bearded old man sitting in a chair watching him. "Young man, what are you doing here?" the old man asked indifferently. Levi's coughed dryly. We SHIELD care about the lonely old man like you the most. No matter what trouble you have, we can solve it. Do you have trouble in your hands, old man? You must know that the contract of Street Van Gonzalo is now a hot potato, and the Witch Heart Demon wants to get it all the time. Once the Witch Heart Demon found out that the contract of Street Van Gonzalo was in the hands of the old knight, there was only one fate for him, and that was to be killed by the Witch Heart Demon. The old knight remained silent. Then the door on the other side was opened. "Are you looking for me?" Johnny walked out with a pale face. "Ah. The same could be said. Levis nodded. Then come on. Johnny said that he was about to transform into a Ghost Rider, but was pulled by the old knight beside him. The old knight looked at Levis and frowned. You came for what happened last night? But you didn't kill him? The old knight didn't understand. If Levis wanted to get revenge on Johnny, he could have killed him last night. But why are you still looking for it today? I definitely didn't come to kill him. Levis waved his hand. I'm here for only one purpose, that is, the Street Van Gonzalo Covenant. Hearing this, the old knight was shocked, and his heart was horrified. Why did the man in front of him know that the contract of Street Van Gonzalo was in his hands? And there's no hesitation at all, like he is pretty sure the thing is in his hands. Definitely, although he had a bad premonition in his heart, he still said with the same expression, I don't know what you are talking about. I'm just an ordinary old man. If you have nothing to do, get out of here. 99. Alright then. Levis shrugged and left the room without any hesitation. The old knight and Johnny were a little stunned when they saw this, as if they didn't expect him to actually leave. At this time, Levis, who had just walked out of the door, suddenly turned his head and said, by the way, lend me a shovel from outside the door, and I will send you a new one. Hearing this, the old knight was shocked. Johnny, stop him. Johnny is still a little confused when he hears it, so he has to do it for a shovel. Did something go wrong? And at the moment Levis had got the shovel, then broke it, and a scroll inside fell out. He had long known that the contract of Street Van Gonzalo was hidden in this shovel, so he didn't bother to talk nonsense with the old knight, and just took the things away. After all, his purpose is only for the contract of Street Van Gonzalo. Chapter 103 Thor is locked up. At this moment, Johnny also reacted and saw that he instantly transformed into Ghost Rider and rushed towards him. Hey, haven't you learned enough lessons? You can't beat me with your current strength. Levis smiled disdainfully. However, Ghost Rider didn't stop and rushed over. Forget it, let's play with you. Levis walked half a step to the side with his hands behind his back, and instantly avoided Ghost Rider's fist. Although Ghost Rider is a professional racing driver, he is still too bad for fighting. Immediately after that, he kicked his ass with a kick in the back, making Ghost Rider fall and eat shit. Ghost Rider refused to accept it and got up again. But it was still useless. At the moment, Johnny has just mastered the power of Ghost Rider, and it is not dangerous for him at all. Johnny, stop. At this moment, the old knight shouted loudly. Although Johnny was very unconvinced, he still stopped. Young man, do you really want to take away the contract? The old knight asked with a serious expression. Definitely, isn't that obvious? And what are you doing to stop me? Levis asked back with his arms crossed. Hearing this, the old knight looked a little complicated. Although he had betrayed Mephisto, the Lord of Hell, most of his Ghost Rider power had been recovered. But the only remaining power is enough to make him transform again, which is why he can live so long. So do you want to transform into a desperate one? After thinking for a long time, the old knight sighed. Forget it, take the things away. What? Levis was a little surprised, but he didn't expect the old knight to give up so much. I said that this thing is very dangerous to put with you, because the witch heart demon is always looking for it, and you don't have to worry about it after I take it away. You're not from the devil's side? Johnny asked with a frown. Levi smiled and said, isn't it very obvious? You can use your Eye of Judgment to see Tilda. Johnny frowned upon hearing this, then opened the Eye of Judgment. However, unlike what he saw last time, this time he didn't see the slightest sin on the other side. What exactly is going on? Johnny, I've said long ago not to blindly believe in the Eye of Judgment. Sometimes what you see may not be true. At this time, the old knight's old voice said. Levi sneered when he heard the words. The so-called Eye of Judgment just made the target recall the crimes he had committed. He had long since removed the magic that the Ancient One had left on him. Eye of Judgment is useless if the target doesn't think he's guilty at all. Just like Thanos, is Thanos good or bad? A lot of people think they are bad guys, but it's completely useless if you use Eye of Judgment to see it. There are many other examples of the same, so blindly trusting Eye of Judgment is not advisable. Young man, can you tell me who wants the contract of Street Van Gonzalo? The old knight asked with a serious expression. Although there is no way to snatch the Street Van Gonzalo contract back, he also wants to know who wants this thing. Have you heard of Sorcerer Supreme? Levi said with a faint smile. What? The old knight was shocked when he heard the words. He definitely knew the name Sorcerer Supreme, and he also knew that he was a figure of the same rank as Mephisto, the Lord of Hell. Unexpectedly, it was these people who wanted the Street Van Gonzalo contract. Suddenly he seemed to think of something, and his eyes widened. The contract of Street Van Gonzalo can summon the Lord of Hell, which means that the Sorcerer Supreme is ready to take the initiative to Hell. Thinking of this possibility, the old knight was inexplicably horrified. After a long time, he calmed down in front of him. Take the things, said the old knight, turning around and preparing to go back to the house. But Johnny on the side was still a little unwilling. Don't talk about it, you and I can't control this matter anymore. The old knight scolded, then waved his hand and entered the house. Seeing this, Johnny couldn't do anything about it, and after looking at Levi's, he followed into the room. Levi's, who didn't know how the old knight made up his mind, looked a little inexplicable. But since the contract of Street Van Gonzalo has been obtained, there is no need to stay here. Definitely, before leaving. He also did not forget to check in the old knight. Ding. Did the host check in with the ex-Ghost Rider? Sign in. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for gaining 200 experience points. As predicted, this time the sign-in gave double experience, but this was also what he expected. Back to the hotel. The little naughty has woken up. Vice, where did you go early in the morning? Little naughty asked curiously. Go get something. Let's go. 35. Levi's explained with a smile, and then the two packed up and set off. When they went out, Melinda was already waiting, and seeing the two of them came out, she couldn't help complaining. You guys are coming too slowly. That's it. What did the man do in the morning? I thought you should know. Levi's drew it with a pen, then put one hand around the little naughty waist and smiled. Melinda rolled her eyes when she heard his colorful jokes. The three continued on their way. The next day, they came to a temporary base built on a wasteland. Hey, May, isn't this? Phil Coulson, who had been waiting for a long time, greeted him warmly. You can call me Naughty. Little Naughty introduced herself. If she was not very familiar with people, she would not introduce her real name. Oh. Naughty, what a nice name, Phil Coulson said with a smile. What's going on now? Levi's asked curiously. It's not bad. The hammer is still in place, no one can pick it up, but last night, a strange person rushed, leaders, and broke our defense. And then? Did the man pick up the hammer? Levi's had already guessed who the man was, unsurprisingly because it was Thor. Definitely not, and he looks a little out of whack, explained Phil Coulson. You've locked him up? Levi's asked. Yes, that person's physical fitness is good, he should have trained in that place, and several of our agents couldn't stop him. Levi's wanted to laugh at Phil Coulson's words. That is Thor, although he has become an ordinary person, but the long-term battle is not something that can be trained if you want to train. You didn't do anything excessive to him, did you? For example, torture to extract a confession or something? After all, Thor was only trained by Odin's exile. It's not good if you do it too much. Evil. Chapter 104. Sign into Hawkeye Barton. Pick up Mjolnir easily. I was planning to use some special means, but I haven't had time yet. Phil Coulson shrugged. Fortunately I didn't have time. 99. Levi's said and suddenly saw a man with a quiver on his back. Huh? You're Hawkeye? Exclamation mark. I know you too, Levi's. Hawkeye smiled and stretched out his hand. He was still a little surprised to be called out. It should be the first time the two of them met. Hello. Levi's smiled and shook his hand. Speaking of which, he had joined SHIELD for so long and he had never seen Hawkeye, but he didn't expect to see him here. Hawkeye is still quite outstanding in the Avengers. Although he is just an ordinary person, he does not have the appearance of Natasha Romanoff, nor does he have any super ability. But in the face of various events, it has performed very well. Don't know what ability can be signed in Hawkeye. Levi's quietly withdrew his hand, and then directly signed in. Ding. Did the host sign into Hawkeye Barton? Yes. 99. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Marksman, with 100 experience points. Marksman? What the hell is this ability? 510. Levi's is a bit dumbfounded. The Marksman ability allows him to have far more abilities than ordinary people in weapons such as archery, throwing knives, and firearms. This ability is like a divine help in Hawkeye, making him a superhero without a super ability. But for Levi's, it seems a bit tasteless. Forget it, there is experience value anyway. Vice, you just said it's not too late. Phil Coulson asked suspiciously. Oh. I mean you guys didn't have time to do anything to that person. Levi's smiled. Why? Not only was Phil Coulson very puzzled, but Melinda and Hawkeye were also very curious. Levi's smiled, not in a hurry to explain. Because of the time they spent talking, they had come to the pit where Mjolnir was. Before we came here, there were a lot of people who tried to move it and couldn't get it to move. And we've tried it with large machines, and the results are obvious. Speaking of which, Phil Coulson looked helpless. Can't anyone move it? I'll try it. Levi's walked over eagerly. Phil Coulson and Hawkeye did not stop them, but instead looked like they were watching a good show. They have all seen the evil sect of this hammer. Even if the large lifting machinery can't move half a minute, how can the manpower move? Levi's came to Mjolnir and put one hand on the handle of the hammer and tried it hard, and it was obvious that Mjolnir didn't move. That is to say he is not recognized by Mjolnir. This result was within his expectations. Phil Coulson and Hawkeye couldn't help but smile when they saw this. However, at this moment, Levi's directly picked up Mjolnir. This scene directly made everyone's eyes widen. You actually moved it? Phil Coulson looked in disbelief. It's a miracle. Hawkeye couldn't believe it. It's really heavy. Levi's waved Mjolnir in surprise at this time. Legend has it that Mjolnir is made from materials extracted from the core of the Death Star. As we all know, when a fixed star becomes a dead star, it will become a white dwarf, a neutron star or a black hole depending on its mass. Among them, white dwarf stars have a weight of about tens of tons per cubic centimeter, while neutron stars will at least reach a weight of 100 million tons per cubic centimeter. According to this value, to calculate the volume of Mjolnir, its weight can be imagined. Unlike Levi's, however, he can manipulate gravity using vector operations. Without gravity, Mjolnir was completely light in his hands, allowing him to swipe at will. Definitely, without Mjolnir's approval, it is impossible to use Thor's power. At most it can be used as a heavyweight weapon. But it was useless for him to ask for the hammer, and Odin would not let him take it away. He casually threw the hammer back to its place, and he turned around and came to the side of the crowd. "What's wrong with you?" 35. Seeing everyone staring at them, Levi's looked puzzled. "Cough, it's okay, it's okay." Phil Coulson waved his hand in embarrassment. How did you pick it up?" Hawkeye on the side was always puzzled. "It's easy, if you can control gravity," Levi said with a smile on his chest. Hawkeye heard this and thought it was a joke, but didn't take it seriously. "Vice, now you can tell us what you think." At this time, Melinda on the side looked at him and said, from the very beginning, Melinda saw that he must know something, otherwise, he would not have said that sentence before. Seeing that everyone looked at him suspiciously, Levi's had to explain it to everyone. "Let me tell you the origin of this hammer. I wonder if you have heard the name Mjolnir?" 99. "The legendary Mjolnir?" Phil Coulson answered quickly. "Yes, the legendary Mjolnir." Levi's nodded. Hearing this, everyone couldn't believe that the legendary Mjolnir appeared in front of them. "By the way, I talked about the person you locked up before." 35. "That lunatic?" Phil Coulson asked. I think you'd better not call Raw that," Levi said with a bit of pain. If Phil Coulson knew that the man he called a lunatic was Thor of Norse mythology, he would have had a wonderful look on his face. "What's wrong with him? Could it be that he has some incredible background?" Melinda on the side wondered. "Yes, he does have a great background," Levi said, pointing to Mjolnir. "What do you think of when you see this hammer?" Phil Coulson folded his arms across his chest and rubbed his chin, guessing, "Mjolnir is here. Could it be Thor?" "Congratulations, you got it right." Levi's laughed and applauded. At the same time, in a confinement room not far away, Thor sat on the chair with lost eyes. At the moment, he didn't have the arrogance that he used to lead a copy of Giants of Jotunheim with high spirits. Today, he is nothing more than a bare child who was kicked out of the house by his father and was extremely remorseful and annoyed. He lost his glory, his family, his friends, and most importantly he lost Mjolnir's approval. At this moment, he has lost everything, so he can no longer be proud. At this moment, a figure suddenly appeared in the room. "My dear brother." A familiar voice rang in his ears, and Thor raised his head suddenly. "Loki, what are you doing here?" "I definitely came to see you," Loki said with a sad look on his face. Chapter 105. Loki's confused Loki. Seeing this, Thor said anxiously, "What happened? Was it Jotunheim?" "Those giants of Jotunheim went to war. Loki took me back, and I'll ask my father to explain." "Father is dead." Loki told him the harsh truth. "What?" Thor looked in disbelief. "A new war is coming, and my father can't hold it anymore. It's my fault." An indescribable shame and remorse made Thor lowered his proud head. "Can I go back?" Toshi raised his head and asked. "The truce is based on the premise of exiling you, so I'm here to say goodbye to you." "Goodbye." 99. Loki still said with a sad face. Hearing this, Thor looked pained. "Thank you for visiting me, Loki. I'm so sorry." Seeing that the effect he wanted had been achieved, Loki left the room immediately. After thinking about it, he didn't leave directly, but was ready to try if he could pick up Mjolnir. At the same time, Phil Coulson and Hawkeye were in disbelief after Levi's revealed that the man they were holding was Thor. "Are you really sure that the guy who can't hold a hammer and has some mental disorder is the legendary Thor?" 35. Phil Coulson had a pained look on his face. Although he tried his best not to believe this, he had to believe what came out of Levi's mouth. "I think it's better to tell the director about this first," Melinda said, and called Nick Fury to explain the current situation. "What? That hammer is sure to be Mjolnir? Thor was the one you caught?" When Nick Fury found out about this, he also had a look of pain on his face. "If this thing is false, it's fine, but if it is true, what they have done is enough to start a war." After experiencing the Captain Marvel thing, he became very careful with aliens. But he didn't go back to blame Phil Coulson at this point. "Phil Coulson, you hand over the phone to." "Okay, Chief." Phil Coulson agreed, before handing the phone over to Levi's. Levi's took the call and said angrily, "What do you want to say, Director?" Hearing this nonchalant tone, Nick Fury was a little embarrassed, thinking that he hadn't told him about Ghost Rider before. "Are you really sure that the hammer is Mjolnir, and that the one who was caught is also Thor?" 35. "What? You don't believe in Thor? Or don't you believe in the hammer?" Levi's responded. "It's not that I don't want to believe it. I mean, if this is true, will Thor start a war over it?" "Well," Levi's said and paused. Nick Fury was a little apprehensive when he heard this, for fear that he would say the answer he didn't want to hear. "I can only say that you think too much, and even if there are aliens calling, there are tall people who are standing up, whereas your turn to worry about 35. Not to mention whether Odin will send someone to call. Even if they call, there will be Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. Where to get him a little shield director to worry about eating radish? Well, then I'm relieved. Nick Fury finally sighed in relief when he heard his words. But why did Thor lose his power? Why did he come to Earth? Why couldn't he pick up his own hammer? Coulson was still a little puzzled. Well, you can ask him yourself. What am I doing? Before Levis could finish speaking, he saw a man in a suit with a slicked head and suit walked towards Mjolnir, ignoring everyone. Loki. Levis looked at Loki oddly, not expecting him to show up at this time. Loki came to Mjolnir and raised one hand, but Mjolnir didn't move. Immediately afterward, Loki directly clenched Mjolnir with both hands, pulling it upwards as if he was trying to pull it up, but unfortunately Mjolnir remained motionless. Hey, Vice, what are you looking at? The little naughty waved his hand beside his eyes strangely, not knowing what he was looking at. Coulson and Melinda are the same. Hearing this, Levi smiled and said, I'm watching a fool trying to pick up Mjolnir. Is someone taking Mjolnir? Why can't I see it? Melinda rubbed her eyes and looked beside Mjolnir, but didn't see anyone. Seeking flowers. Coulson came directly to Mjolnir, but saw no one. Such an empty place. If anyone had been there, they would have seen it. However, their moves also succeeded in attracting Loki's idea. Because of the use of illusion magic, ordinary humans cannot see him at all. But Levi's is different. He also has the super ability of illusion. Loki's illusions didn't work for him at all. You can't see it because the other party used an illusion, so you should be able to see, Levi said with a wave of his hand, directly breaking Loki's illusion. Then Loki appeared in front of everyone. What? There's actually someone. Coulson was startled by the man who suddenly appeared beside him, and stepped back quickly. 0. The agents on the side also loaded their bullets when they saw this, and turned to Loki. At the moment Loki is a bit confused. How did these mortals see him? And his illusion has been broken? What are you kidding? Who the hell are you? Coulson asked, frowning. You mortals don't have the right to know the name of a god. After saying that, Loki had an extra scepter in his hand, and then waved it. His purpose is to clear the memories of these mortals. Levi's wouldn't let him, however, and telepathy blocked Loki's magic in an instant. After all, Loki wants to clear other people's memories, but also uses mental power. Levi's strength today may have some problems against Odin in his heyday, but he's more than enough against a mere Loki. Seeing that his magic had failed again, Loki frowned suddenly, and then turned his eyes to Levi's, who always wore a faint smile. Are you moving your hands and feet? It looks like you're not stupid. Levi smiled lightly. Mortal, I'm the god of Asgard. Do you know the consequences of offending a god? Loki said with a look of aloofness. Levi's looked at him a little surprised. How could this be pretended? I've never seen a god so weak as you. Hearing this, Loki was a little angry, and saw the scepter in his hand pointed at Levi's, and a beam of light shot out. Chapter 106, Loki, who fled in embarrassment, signed into Mjolnir. Loki waved his scepter angrily, and a magic beam shot at him. Levi smiled disdainfully at this, without any intention of dodging. When the magic beam hit him, it was instantly reflected back. Boom. Loki, who was caught off guard, was blasted away by the magic beam that bounced back. Hey, who is that person? Is he also a mutant? At this time Coulson asked the doubts in his heart. Mutant? Definitely not. Levi's shook his head and asked. Thor appeared, and then what did you think? Norse mythology? Odin, the legendary king of the gods, the seat of the gods. Asgard, goddess Sif, the evil god Loki, Ragnarok. Everyone expressed their opinions and thought of many things about the Nordic Nth myth. Stop. 99. Levi's waved his hand to calm everyone down. He glanced at everyone with contempt, then smiled at Little Naughty and said, Mary's guess is very correct. The evil god Loki. Vice, you mean that person is the evil god Loki? Coulson looked at the man who got up from the ground not far away in disbelief. Because of the rain before, the ground was muddy, and Loki just fell into the mud. At the moment, he didn't look like a god. Loki staggered to his feet and shook his dizzy head. The blow just now caught him off guard, so much so that he can't stand still now. After finally recovering, Loki looked at Levi's angrily. Stupid mortal, you will pay for what you do. 55. After speaking, Loki came to him in a flash, and hit him with the scepter in his hand. Don't look at the fact that Loki only has a scepter in his hand, but as the giants of Jotunheim, his power is definitely not to be underestimated. Although Loki is a magician, but isn't it too disrespectful to play melee in front of Levi's? If he moves, he loses. Boom. Undoubtedly, when Loki's scepter landed on Levi's head, it was ejected immediately, hitting him right on the forehead. It wasn't easy. Loki fainted immediately. Is this the legendary evil god Loki? Why doesn't it look like it? It's really. Little Naughty thought for a long time and couldn't think of how to describe it. It's too weak, isn't it? Levi's took over with a smile on his chest with his arms folded. That's right. It's too weak to be stunned by his own weapon, which is too bad. 35. The Little Naughty looked at the embarrassed Loki with disdain. It's a little too weak indeed. Can you make a mistake? Phil Coulson also did not believe that the man in front of him was the legendary evil god Loki. Well, it's normal for you to think like that, definitely. It's not that Loki is too weak, it's that I'm too strong. 35 Levi's folded his arms and told the truth. However, this is really too narcissistic in the eyes of everyone. Then what are we going to do now? This is the legendary evil god Loki. Now that you have beaten him, will it cause a war? Melinda was a little worried about this. Don't worry, it's said that the aliens are calling and there are tall people who are standing up. Besides, if the aliens could call, they would have already called. Do you have to wait until now? Levi's waved his hand indifferently. Everyone was thoughtful when they heard what he said. What about the evil god Loki? Phil Coulson said, looking at Loki, who was in a state of confusion on the ground. Levi's looked at Loki on the ground, and suddenly let out a small whimper. What's wrong? Is there a problem? Phil Coulson asked nervously. Loki's gone. Levi's explained lightly. Ran? Everyone was a little confused, so it was obvious that Loki was right in front of them. Levi's snapped his fingers and saw that Loki, who was still lying on the ground just now, disappeared in an instant. It turned out that Loki had already used illusion to escape when he was hit by his scepter just now. The appearance of fainting just now is nothing more than an illusion. As the evil god Loki, how could he be easily stunned by his own attack? That's too bad. After realizing that he was not the opponent of the mortal in front of him, he resolutely fled. At the moment Loki has returned to Asgard Bifrost, looking at the starry sky below with a cold expression on his face. Mortal, wait for me. I'll let you know the fate of teasing God, and my stupid brother. You'll never want to turn over. 99. The other side. Phil Coulson and Melinda didn't know whether to be happy or worried when they learned that the evil god Loki had escaped. On the one hand, the evil god Loki was finally sent away, but on the other hand, he was worried about the resulting war. Levi's have nothing to worry about, since Loki is their main enemy in the future. As for killing Loki, he didn't think about this at all. If Loki was killed now, then Asgard and giants of Jotunheim might attack Earth at the same time. After all, Loki is the son of Odin, the god king on the one hand, and Loth, the leader of the giants of Jotunheim, on the other. If he is killed, it is very likely that the two forces should rebound. If you kill Loki, a lot of plots will collapse in the future, and maybe how will it develop? If Thanos collects the Infinity Stones ahead of time, and then clicks his fingers, it will be troublesome. And if you kill Loki, who will send him the Mind Stone? I think if you sign into the Mind Gem, the ability you get must be very good. Thinking of this, he didn't bother to care about it. Wait, what should we do with it, Thor? Phil Coulson stopped him when he saw that he wanted to leave. Definitely let him go. Could it be that you still intend to continue imprisoning him? Levi's rolled his eyes and left Naughty with his arms around him. He wasn't going to see Thor, he'd run out of sign-ins today, and he'd be back tomorrow. Phil Coulson followed his advice and let Thor go. As expected, Thor still got together with a few members of the scientific research team after he left. The next day, Levi's first checked in with Mjolnir. Ding. Did the host sign into Mjolnir? Yes. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Weapon Strengthening, with 100 experience points. Weapon Strengthening? What kind of ability is this? Levi's was a little confused, but after some understanding, he finally understood. In short, this ability is somewhat similar to the noble phantasm knights do not die with bare hands in Fate. That is to say, whether it is a newspaper or a bottle of mineral water, any item in his hands can be strengthened into a powerful weapon. This is a good super ability. Levi's is quite satisfied with this ability. Chapter 107 Seeing Thor for the first time, gaining the power of Thor. The next day, Nick Fury specially dispatched a lot of firepower because he heard that aliens would come here next. Although Levi's made it very clear that he only needs to be alone, but Nick Fury can do whatever he wants. He doesn't care about these things either. Came to the town with a little Naughty. Today his purpose is to find Thor to sign in. At the moment, in a small shop, Thor seems to have begun to adjust to ordinary human life. Thor. These two said they knew you. Jane Forte's good friend Daisy Louise brought two people in. Thor looked at Levi's and little Naughty, and shook his head suspiciously. I don't know them. Jane and Daisy were also a little confused when they saw this. Levi's came over and smiled faintly. It's okay if you don't know us, but we know you. His smile was very friendly, and Daisy and Jane instantly dispelled their doubts. Now that you know each other, come and do it. By the way, have you had breakfast? Dr. Eric, who studies astronomy, waved to him, indicating that they can come and sit. Seeing that they were so enthusiastic, Levi's was a little puzzled, but he didn't know that the Super 22 ability of affinity was at work. Sorry, we've already had breakfast. We're here to find Thor something. Alright then. Dr. Eric didn't insist. Then Levi's, Naughty, Thor, Daisy, and Jane came to the side and sat down. Do you really know me? Thor looked at Levi's suspiciously, and he didn't seem to have seen him in his mind. Definitely, I still know Thor is called Raw. 99 Levi's smiled lightly. Hearing the name Raw, Thor finally believed a little bit. After all, when he first came to Earth, even if he reported his family, He was treated like a fool. Daisy and Jane on the side were a little puzzled, but they didn't speak. Do you know why you were banished here? Levis asked with a smile. I'm tired of a big mistake, and that's why I was exiled by my father, Thor said with a wry smile. You did make a big mistake. But did you ever think that your father just let you down to practice experience? Levis nodded and said, that's right. No parent would leave their child ruthlessly. I think this is just your father's test for you. Really? Thor was clearly agitated. Definitely. Levis nodded affirmatively. But my father died because of the mistakes I made, and my mother didn't want to see me. It's all my fault. Thor said this with a sad look on his face. Being able to make such a strong man show such an expression shows how sad he is in his heart, and Jane on the side is very distressed about it. I said, what are you talking about? After listening for a long time, Jane and Daisy couldn't understand what they were saying. Levis glanced at the two of them and didn't explain anything, and Thor, who was immersed in grief, obviously had no intention of explaining. Thor, are you sure your father is dead? Odin, the king of the gods, died so easily? So who killed him? Have you ever thought about this? A series of questions left Thor a little surprised. You mean, as the king of the gods, your father is not so easy to die, and even if you die, you should find out the truth yourself. Loki usually likes to play pranks, and this matter may really deceive me, and with his father's strength, he will never be killed easily, Tony said, finally making sure that his father didn't die. But more doubts came to mind. Why did Loki tell him that his father was dead, and his mother didn't want to see him? This made Tony very confused. Well, that's all I have to say. Levis isn't going to reveal more, he's just here to sign in. Ding. Did the host sign in to Thor? Sign me in. Ding. Sign in is successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 100 experience points of the super ability The Power of Thor. As expected, he had a feeling before that if he smashed Thor to sign, he would have a high probability of gaining Thor's power. And now it really got this ability. Thor's force is not the same as electromagnetism, it is more towards magic. Thor's power can strengthen itself, making the body stronger, and secondly, it can control the power of lightning. This is also a very powerful ability. If it can be upgraded to IV6, I am afraid that his Thor's power is not weaker than Odin's. In a good mood, Levis pulled the little naughty and was ready to leave. And many more. Huh? He was stunned when he heard Thor's voice. Thank you for telling me this. I want to know who you are. Thor stood up, revealing the spirit of being Prince Asgard. Seeing this, Levis smiled and said, my name is Levis, I'm just an ordinary earthling. After he finished speaking, he took the little naughty and turned to leave the shop. Thor looked at the two you went to, and was still thinking about what he said just now. Should he believe this person? Daisy and Jane on the side have already been dumbfounded. What is Odin, the king of the gods? What is Thor or something? The two of them just wanted to know if today was April Fool's Day. 510 returned to the makeshift camp. Unexpectedly, Tony was called over by Nick Fury, and it seemed that he really took this matter seriously. Hey, I heard you can't even handle a hammer, right? Tony laughed immediately when he saw him. Who did you hear that? Levis rolled his eyes. Otherwise, why would you let me come too? Let me tell you, your ability is useless to me after my transformation, Tony said with a stinky expression. Oh? It seems that you have made a lot of defenses against my ability. Wouldn't your steel armor be called anti-wes armor? Levis said strangely. He is very aware of Tony's character. He usually laughs and studies weapons to deal with you without a moment's back. It's useless? Definitely not. Although I think the name you mentioned is good, but I have installed a magnetic field interference device on the armor, so your electromagnetic waves are useless to me, Tony said with a look of pride. Really? You seem to have forgotten that electromagnetism is not just electricity, but also magnetism. How do you solve it? Levis folded his arms and smiled. After speaking, Tony flew into the sky involuntarily, and then performed various acrobatic movements. Although he started the thruster and tried to break free, it was completely useless. Chapter 108 A Bet with Tony, Sky Battleship Ideas. When Tony was put down, the cheeseburger he had eaten in the morning was thrown up. Can you not play like this next time? Tony looked at him resentfully. I see, then change the way next time. What do you think of high-altitude bungee jumping? Levis folded his arms and smiled. Tony's armor trying to get out of his electromagnetic grip. That is almost impossible. After all, the whole body of the steel armor is metal. Even if it gets rid of the control of electromagnetic waves, how can it get rid of the control of magnetic force? To solve the effects of electromagnetic waves and magnetic force at the same time, he didn't think of how to solve it anyway. And even if these are solved, there are still vector operations. What about cannonballs? All in all, Tony was swayed by him. Hey, this is the hammer you're talking about? I don't think so, Tony said disdainfully at Mjolnir's place. If you don't agree, just go up and try. By the way, I forgot to tell you, but I can easily pick up this hammer. Well, I'll try. If I succeed, don't worship me, Tony said excitedly and walked over. Levi stood with his arms crossed, watching the show. Tony came up to Mjolnir, the steel arm firmly grasped the handle of the hammer, and then lifted it hard. Yet Mjolnir did not move. "Ugh, I think I need to use both hands," Tony explained awkwardly, then put both hands on the handle of the hammer and pulled it up. The strength of the steel armor is really good, and even the feet are deeply sunk into the ground. But what Tony didn't expect was that Mjolnir still couldn't move a bit, which was a little embarrassing. "Tony, the way you lift things is cool." Levi's couldn't help teasing. "Cough, I really can't pick it up, but that doesn't mean you can pick it up easily." An embarrassed Tony can only change the subject. "You do not believe?" "Definitely, I don't believe you can pick it up." Tony nodded. "Make a bet?" "You need to do me a favor if I pick it up." Levi's mouth twitched slightly. "I just need your help too." Tony took the bet without hesitation. Seeing Tony's promise, Levis smiled conspicuously. Recently, he has been thinking about building a high-tech sky warship, but he has not been able to find a suitable place as a research site, and there are no researchers. Now that Tony came to the door, there was no reason for him to turn away. "I saw him come to Mjolnir, and after using victor manipulation to control gravity, he grabbed it with one hand and then waved it twice in front of Tony." "How?" "Give up," Levi said with a smug smile. "This is impossible." Tony couldn't believe that the hammer that he had not picked up just now was easily swung by Levi's. "You're not convinced?" Levi's raised his brows. "Then I'll leave the hammer here, you can try it." 35. With that he put Mjolnir back in place, motioning for Tony to try again. Tony looked at him, then gripped the handle of the hammer with unbelieving hands and squeezed hard. However, the result remains the same as before. This made Tony a little puzzled. "Okay, let's accept the bet," Levi said with his arms crossed. "Okay, I admit defeat." Although Tony was a little unconvinced, he had no choice but to admit defeat. After taking off the steel armor, the two came outside, and Tony asked curiously, "Vice, what did you just say you need my help with?" 35. I need to build a sky warship." Levi's expressed his ambition without any concealment. "Sky battleship? The kind that can enter the universe?" Tony was stunned by his words, knowing that there is no real manned spacecraft that can enter space on the Earth today. The manned rocket is a very restrictive thing. He believes Levi's is disdain. "Do you know how many resources are needed to make that kind of sky warship?" "I'm afraid that the entire Stark industry is not enough to be hollowed out, and the most important thing is the materials that can make sky warships." "Don't worry about this. Don't forget that I can make end element substances." Levi's waved his hand. Tony was at a loss for words when he heard the words, thinking that it was indeed possible to succeed. "Even if you say so, it's not easy to create an ideal sky battleship, and I have to update my steel armor." 5. Tony waved his hand, obviously not optimistic about the plan. "Well, it's a bit early to think about that." 99. Levi's folded his hands on his chest and touched his chin, thinking, and now he is completely unprepared. It is indeed a delusion to want to build an ideal sky battleship. But if there is an artificial intelligence to share his worries, then this matter is much easier. Thinking of this, Levi's also had the idea of creating his own artificial intelligence like Jarvis. The next day, Tony looked at the blue sky and couldn't help complaining a little. "I said, when will this alien appear?" "You know I'm very busy, right?" "I don't know, but it should be in these few days." 35. Levi's shrugged, and then said with a look of contempt, "And you don't seem to be busy with anything. You push everything to the little ones." Chilly. 5. To be honest, he was a bit envious that Tony had Little Pepper as a virtuous inner helper. Little Pepper would take care of everything in the company, while he concentrated on higher research. It can be said that Tony's success is inseparable from the help of Pepper. "You can be envious, but I remember it wasn't this girl that you brought to the banquet last time. Did you figure it out?" Tony glanced at the little naughty not far away, and turned him around. "Leaders," joked. "Cut. I'm not like you playboy and throw it away, but I will treat them well." Levi's rolled his eyes and said, "Oh, you can handle that?" Tony looked surprised. "I'm not the same as you, even if it's doubled, I can easily." Levi's gave him a disdainful look. Speaking of this, Tony was immediately dissatisfied. At the same time, Asgard domain. At the moment Asgard, the three warriors and Sif are negotiating a plan to save Thor. Thor is now exiled, Loki is ready to usurp power, Asgard is on the brink of war, and Vorstag you can eat 4 wild boars, 6 pheasants, half a cow, and 2 kegs of beer. Don't you think? Are you a rice bucket? The very anxious Fandral looked at Vorstager, who was still eating and drinking, and finally couldn't help rushing up to slap the plate in his hand. Chapter 109. The Three Warriors of Asgard and the Arrival of Sif. When the food was overturned, Vorstag stood up angrily and said, "Don't take my good appetite as indifference, you also need to fill your stomach when you fight." Fandral, Vorstager is right, don't you know his character? At this moment, Sif came over and stood in front of the two of them. "Guys, it's time for us to do something serious." Hogan looked at everyone and said, "You mean to go to Thor?" "It's impossible, it's total suicide." Fandral shook his head. "Now that Loki is the king of Asgard, it would be treason to leave Asgard without his orders, and once they are discovered they are doomed." "Be quiet, maybe Heimdall is looking at us now," Hogan whispered. As an Asgard guard, Heimdall possesses clairvoyant acute ears and can observe any place in Asgard at any time. At this moment, however, The rooms were opened. A soldier came in. Heimdall wants to see you. Hearing the soldier's words, the four of them were shocked. What they were worried about happened, and Heimdall was really watching them just now. Seeing this, the four of them could only immediately follow behind the soldier in dejection. After a while, they came to Heimdall. Heimdall wears golden armor, but is a black man, the guardian of Asgard's Bifrost. And Bifrost is Asgard's passage to the 539 realms. How dare you disobey King Loki's orders and want to bring Thor back with treason? Heimdall asked the four men with a majestic gaze. Yes, the four of Sif nodded and were ready for the trial. However, what the people who haven't yet said next surprised them. Good idea, I have to be loyal to the king, so I can't open Bifrost for you, but Bifrost sometimes fails. Saying so, Heimdall left the room linked by Bifrost. All that was left was the four who looked at each other dumbfounded. At this moment, Bifrost suddenly flashed light, and a dazzling light beam shot out, connecting to the unknown starry sky. Seeing this, the four of them still didn't understand that Heimdall deliberately told them to go to Thor. Without the slightest hesitation, the four jumped into Bifrost's entrance and immediately disappeared as a ray of light. At the same time, Heimdall's little gesture did not hide Loki. The other party's purpose was self-evident, obviously wanting to welcome his stupid brother back. With the strength of Asgard's 3 warriors, even if he wanted to stop it, it was too late. Thinking of this, Loki came to the palace treasury to wake up the long-sleeping killer. Wake up, Destroyer. Looking at the terrifying Destroyer walking out of the light curtain, Loki couldn't help laughing proudly. The warrior who betrayed Asgard, the foolish brother, and finally the mortal, destroyed them all. The other side. Levis was boring and bickering with Thor, and at this moment Coulson hurried over. It is found that there is a high-energy reflection in the northwest direction. It should be the aliens you mentioned, Vice. Oh. Has it come yet? Let me go meet these aliens for a while. Tony finished opening the suitcase beside him, and instantly finished his suit of steel armor. Afterwards, Raw flew away without hitting a single one, and smashed the roof of the temporary camp by the way. Levis and Coulson looked helpless. You can get him to lose money. Oh, I will. Vice, what happened? At this moment, the little naughty came over curiously. Aliens have come, let's go and see, Levi said, hugging the little naughty waist and disappearing instantly. Hey, take me. Coulson, who was on the side, saw that he had left himself with black lines, and he had no choice but to drive there. At the same time, on a plane to the northwest, Tony had already stood in front of the 3 Asgard warriors and the 4 Sif. I heard that you are the guys sent by aliens to make trouble on Earth. What are you doing hiding in the iron box? Don't you dare to see people? Fandral, if you read it right, this is Midget's armor, Hogan said with his arms crossed. Fandral felt a little embarrassed when he heard this. Midgetians, we came here this time without any offense, just to find our partner. Sif stood up and said, oh. Alien beauty. Tony looked at Sif and whistled frivolously. This immediately made the 3 Asgard warriors angry. Stop talking nonsense, teach this midget a lesson. 35 Fandral said. I agree. Hogan agreed this time. Immediately after, the 3 Asgard warriors rushed over. Finally going? I can't wait. 39. Tony put on a pose that he thought was handsome, then stretched out his hands, and instantly fired a palm cannon from his palms. Bang bang. Both Fandral and Vorstager were hit by the palm cannon and almost fell, but this did not actually affect them. The palm cannon is useless? Tony was a little stunned, as expected of an alien. It really is rough and fleshy. Is this how the midgets attack? It's completely ineffective, Fandral said with a look of disdain. The 3 Asgard warriors are not mortals, their bodies are very strong, and ordinary attacks are useless to them. Really? Tony said and charged directly towards Fandral. The strength of the steel armor is very strong, coupled with the high speed flying over. Fandral was knocked out in an instant. It was at this time that Levis and Little Naughty appeared on the field. As soon as they appeared, they found that something was smashing towards them. He subconsciously uses vector manipulation reflexes. In an instant, the thing that was smashed was thrown out in an instant. Only then did Levis react, and it turned out that it was Tony and another person who had hit him. After the two were ejected, they kept rolling on the ground for many laps before they stopped. Hey, are you alright, Tony? Levis asked a little embarrassedly beside Tony. Tony opened the mask and rolled his eyes. It's not dead yet. Oh. That's good. I forgot to tell you, these people are not our enemies, Levis said and looked at the 3 Asgard warriors and the 4 Sifs. Sorry, my friend is a little impulsive. He has no malicious intentions. You are here to find Thor. How do you know? Sif looked at him warily. Stop talking nonsense. Let me teach this guy a lesson. Fandral, who just got up from the ground, rushed towards Levis angrily. I said, can't we just sit down and have a good talk? Levis spread his hands helplessly. Chapter 110. The Destroyer arrives. However, Fandral, who suffered a loss, obviously didn't want to talk to him, and saw him leaping high and punching him. Levis looked helpless. He really didn't want to do it, but at this point he could only grab Fandral's fist with one hand. Humphrey. Fandral immediately showed a disdainful smile when he saw that the mortal in front of him actually used his palm to meet his fist. However, the next moment, he was stunned. I saw that the full-strength punch was actually caught with one hand. A powerful force hit the palm, forming a shockwave that swept away the surrounding dust. Levis calmly grabbed Fandrel's fist and threw him out, this time without vector manipulation. Don't forget that he has gone through super abilities such as evolution and dragon incarnation, and his physical strength have reached a perverted level. The strength of Asgard's 3 warriors was not enough to see before him. Fandrel, who was thrown out, stood up, and unexpectedly, he looked at Levis with no anger, but full of respect. I didn't expect to encounter such a formidable opponent when I came to Midgard for the first time. Warriors, you have won my recognition. Please report your name. 5. Fandrel pulled out the one-handed sword behind his back. Fandrel was a master of swordsmanship, unmatched by his swordsmanship alone, and thus earned the title of the 3 warriors of Asgard. Now that he draws his sword, it means that Levis has his respect. My name is Levis. In fact, we don't need to fight at all. You should be looking for Thor. Levis smiled with his arms crossed. Yeah. Do you know where Thor is? Sif asked, frowning. Hearing Sif say this, Fandrel also stopped for a while. Definitely, you come with me, Levis said, pulling the little naughty to lead the way. Wait Tilda. Fandrel stopped him at this moment. What's wrong? Our battle is not over yet. I will challenge you later, Fandrel said seriously. Levis smiled and said, welcome to your challenge. Fandrel nodded in satisfaction. You must know that Fandrel's temper is more irritable, and his strength is also the strongest among the 3 Asgard warriors. Having received his respect and recognition, the other 2 Asgard warriors and Sif were also polite to Levis. Along the way, the 4 of Sif asked him about Thor's situation, and Levis did not hide it and told them all. Soon everyone came to the town, and at the moment Thor is surprisingly preparing breakfast. Come on, let's try the breakfast I made. Thor took 2 breakfasts and placed them in front of Dr. Eric and Jane Fortes. It's hard to imagine that Thor, who used to be brave and ruthless, is now a good man in the family. If anyone who knows him sees it, he will be shocked and speechless. At the moment a few people outside the window are just like that. Hey, is that really Thor? It doesn't look the same as usual. Vorstag turned to Sif and them with a puzzled look. It should be. I can feel it. Hogan looked a little unsure. I don't know what happened to Tony and Midgard during this period of time, and there has been such a big change. Sif looked at the Midgard woman with a complicated look. Constantly having an affair with Thor. I think you'd better hurry in. Trouble will come later, Levis urged. Trouble? Fandrel was a little puzzled. Without explanation, Levis pushed the door open. Thor, look who was here. Thor, who was joking with Jane Fortes, heard someone call his name and turned his head to look subconsciously. Thor, we finally found you, Vorstag exclaimed excitedly while blowing his beard. Hey, our friends, why are you here? Seeing the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif, Tolton laughed excitedly. A few people chatted. Daisy, Jane and others in the house were also surprised by the dresses of Asgard's 3 warriors and Sif. Until now they have determined Thor's identity. Thor, thank this warrior for bringing us here, otherwise it will be difficult to find you. After talking for a while, Fandrel took Thor to Levis. Brother Vice, thank you again. Thor thanked solemnly. You are very welcome. Levis waved his hand, but looked at the sky outside the town, where he saw a large number of clouds suddenly gathered like a funnel, accompanied by lightning. Everyone followed his gaze. Sif, is anyone else coming besides you? Thor asked Sif with a frown. Seeking flowers. Sif was also a little puzzled. She thought for a while and said, the 4 of us came down together, unless it was behind us. It must be Loki's fault. Fandrel said affirmatively. That's right, the fact that we left Asgard must not have been hidden from him. Vorstag, who was beside him, also nodded. What shall we do? Sif asked, looking at Thor. Guys, I'm just a mortal now, so I can only rely on you. Thor said helplessly. It's okay, we can solve the trouble. Vorstag shook his head and said. At the same time, on Levi's side, Phil Coulson, also called Vice, has. Don't say it, I already understand. This time it should be the real enemy. Let the agents retreat first. Levi's interrupted Phil Coulson directly. Okay then. Phil Coulson agreed without any nonsense, then hung up the phone and let people retreat. However, at this moment, a thunderous sound flashed across the sky. A figure in armor suddenly appeared in front of Phil Coulson and the others. Retreat, retreat. Phil Coulson yelled hastily. The speed of the agents is not slow, and they hurriedly got in the car and ran. However, their speed was still a little slower, and the destroyer's eyes instantly shot out a crimson laser. One of the cars was out of luck and was overturned. The man in the car, by coincidence, was Phil Coulson. Request for support. Request for support. The frightened Phil Coulson did not panic, but immediately called Levi's to the rescue. And the other side. After seeing the descending destroyer, the 3 Asgard warriors were silent for a while. Know that the destroyer armor was made by Odin's best craftsmen at Asgard's orders, and after the armor is built, Odin, Zeus and other important earth gods will transfer some of their power to the destroyer armor, so that the destroyer has immeasurable power. Once Odin drove the destroyer, even able to single out an entire team of celestials. This shows how terrifying it is. It can be said that the strength of the destroyer alone is no weaker than Odin. Chapter 111. Phil Coulson almost got a Bento. Levi's face became solemn. It would be fine if the destroyer was as weak as in the movie, he could handle it easily. But if it is as perverted as in the comics, it will be troublesome. Warrior, we have decided to stop the destroyer. This is our Asgard business and cannot involve you midgets. Fandral came to him and said solemnly, don't mind adding me. Levi's patted his shoulder and laughed. Ha ha ha, I definitely don't mind. It would be an honor to be able to fight alongside the warriors. Fandral laughed. Okay, let's set off without further ado, and try to prevent the destroyer you mentioned from entering the town as much as possible. Levi's nodded. Everyone nodded and said nothing. Everyone, come and catch me May 17th. Levi's said again. Fandral and the others were a little puzzled, but they still stepped forward and grabbed his shoulders. I can take everyone to move and space. Seeing that Sif and the others were still a little confused, he could only explain one sentence. Space mobile. Hearing his words, several people were a little surprised. I didn't expect the midgets to be able to control this ability. Sif sighed, and then put his hand on Fandral. Asgard's 3 warriors and Sif plus him and the little naughty. After the 5 were ready, Levi's was about to launch a space move, but he didn't expect Thor to suddenly grab Vorstag. Take me too. The next moment, several people instantly disappeared in front of several people in the shop. When several people appeared this time, they had already come to a wasteland, and the destroyer was only a few hundred meters away from them. Why did you follow Thor? You are just an ordinary person now. Sif frowned at Thor who was following him. No, as the Prince of Asgard, how can I back down? 35. Thor clenched his fists and said, Thor, do you remember what I said before? Your father just let you come down and experience it. As long as you understand what your father means, then you can regain your divine power. Levi's mentioned it a little, but he didn't dare to say too much. If he said too much and Thor couldn't comprehend it, it would be troublesome. Missing this opportunity, I don't know how long it will take him to wake up. Hearing his words, Thor was stunned, then frowned and thought. Just then, Levi's phone rang again. Vice, ask for support. Ask for support. Phil Coulson, what's wrong with you? Levi's heard something wrong with Phil Coulson's voice, and immediately scanned the past with telepathy. Vice, I'm trapped in a car, and that alien monster is by my side. If there is still a chance, next time I'll take a month's leave and take a good rest. Seeing the destroyer getting closer, Phil Coulson was ready to die. At this moment, destroyer's eyes flashed with dazzling red light again. The next moment a ray of light shot towards him. Phil Coulson could only close his eyes. However, for a long time, he did not feel any difference. Phil Coulson opened his eyes, only to see Levi's figure standing in front of him at some point. The destroyer's laser beam shot directly into his palm, and then the beam was reflected in the other direction. Boom. The original hill was razed to the ground in an instant under this beam. Hey, Phil Coulson, I think your idea of asking for leave is a good idea, and I'm sure the director will approve it. 99. Levi's felt sorry for Phil Coulson, and gave him any dangerous work, such as the last time with the Hulk and the Phoenix. Like this time. If he hadn't felt it in time, I'm afraid Phil Coulson would have gotten his lunch. I think so too. Phil Coulson finally breathed a sigh of relief after saving his life. With a wave of Levi's hand, the car flipped over in an instant. Phil Coulson, you better get out of here. Well, be careful. With that, Phil Coulson pushed open the car door and ran away. At this moment, a flame of fire flew over in the sky. Hey, I didn't expect that. I just went back for a while, but there is another big man who looks similar to me. Tony landed next to Levi's, looking at the destroyer and couldn't help teasing. Just now, because the steel armor was a little damaged, he went back and replaced it with a set of steel armor. On the other side, the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif, Thor and the little naughty all ran over. Vice, how are you? All right? The little naughty ran over and asked. I'm fine, Mary. You step back first. Levi smiled and shook his head. 95. The little naughty nodded. She also knew that she couldn't help much, so she ran to the distance and hid. It was at this time the destroyer's eyes were fixed on Thor, and then a hot beam shot out. Let me. Tony volunteered to come to the front of the crowd ahead of time, only to see his chest raised. The energy cannon on his chest began to charge. The next moment a white beam shot out. 2 beams, one white and one red, collided in the air. Immediately afterwards, Tony's white beam was suppressed. The power of the destroyer is not something that today's steel armor can stop. Seeing that the crimson beam of light was about to be pressed in front of him, Tony's complexion suddenly changed. At this moment, Levi's kicked him away, and then caught the red beam with one hand. The vector operation was fully exerted, and the crimson beam was instantly reflected back. Boom. The destroyer was hit by his own beam and was blasted out instantly. Hey, Tony, are you alright? Levi's teased with a smile. Tony, who was kicked and rolled and fell to the ground, weakly opened his mask, rolled his eyes, and said, I can't die. Fandral is our time. At this time, the 3 Asgard warriors of 4.1 were not alone, and the 4 immediately surrounded the destroyer. Warrior, you can actually block the destroyer's attack, which is really admirable. Sif looked at Levi's and couldn't help but sighed in admiration, and then said, Please block the destroyer's beam attack. We are waiting for the opportunity. Attack the destroyer. Well then, Levis originally planned to deal with the destroyer alone, because he found that the destroyer in front of him was not as strong as he thought. Maybe it's because it was Loki and not Odin who manipulated it. But since Sif said so, he also happily paddled beside him. After discussing the plan, Levis blocked the destroyer's beam, while Asgard's 3 warriors and Sif's attacks fell on the destroyer. Chapter 112 Railgun vs. Destroyer. Dang. One after another, the attacks of the 3 Asgard warriors did not leave any wounds on the destroyer. Instead, Sif pierced the body of the destroyer with a spear. However, this is useless at all. The destroyer just throws several people out at the same time. The pierced wound also healed in an instant. In just an instant, the siege of the 3 Asgard warriors and the 4 of Sif was disintegrated. These Asgards aren't very good at fighting. Tony couldn't help but say this, but his gaze towards the destroyer was a little hot. The armor in front of him is much stronger than his steel armor, if he can study it. Thinking of this, he immediately came up with the destroyer's idea. It is almost impossible to defeat the destroyer with his steel armor, but Levis can. Hey, how about we make a deal, huh? Levis glanced at him suspiciously. Tony whispered, I mean, if you can defeat this armor and take it back to me to study, I'll try my best to help you prepare for the sky battleship thing. How about it? 5. It's no problem to beat 22, but this thing is Asgard's treasure. I'm not sure they will give you research. Well, I'll find a way myself. Tony was already determined to win the destroyer, and he even promised to do it. Well, it's a deal. Levis nodded. Anyway, this destroyer must be dealt with. Whether or not he can get the research right of destroyer is up to Tony himself. Seeing that the 3 Asgard warriors and Sif wanted to continue on, Levis stopped him aloud. You wait, let me try. The 4 of them were stunned when they heard his words, but they slowly backed away. Vice, be careful, this armor is very hard, and normal attacks will not cause any damage to him at all. Fandral reminded. Levis nodded when he heard the words, and then looked at the destroyer whose head flashed red again. You've been shot so many times, it's my turn. As he spoke, a large coin suddenly appeared in his hand, and with a flick of his finger, the coin flew into the sky. Immediately afterwards, a large amount of lightning was suddenly released around him. Zizzy tilde. The terrifying thunder and lightning seemed to be more dazzling than the sun. Meet my railgun. With a proud face, Levis flicked his thumb, and the coin with a lot of lightning turned into an orange light and shot out. At the same time, the red light beam from the destroyer's head also shot out. The 2 beams collided together, and the sky and the earth changed color in an instant, leaving only a dazzling light. Zizzy tilde. Boom. The 2 energies formed a huge amount of energy ball after the collision, and then exploded. The mountain shook for a while, and the dazzling light made people unable to open their eyes. Looking from a distance, I saw a circular energy that kept expanding like a bowl upside down on the ground. Asgard's 3 warriors and Sif's expressions changed greatly, and they hurriedly ran back. Not only them, but Tony hurriedly fled when he saw this. He didn't expect Levis to make such a big noise. Levis smiled faintly, and then his figure disappeared instantly to the side of Little Naughty and Phil Coulson. Vice, you're back. Little Naughty's eyes lit up when he saw him coming back. Yeah. Levis hugged her and nodded with a smile. What a terrifying explosion. I'm afraid it's no less than the power of an intercontinental missile. Phil Coulson couldn't help but exclaim when he saw the explosion in front of him. The energy explosion finally stopped, and I saw that a large crater was formed in the place where it exploded just now, and the diameter has reached a kilometer range by visual inspection. In fact, even Levis never thought that the 2 energy explosions could be so terrifying. How is it resolved? Tony landed beside them too, opened his mask and watched the explosion in shock. At the same time, he also thought about it. Levi's trick just now used the electromagnetic force to eject the coin, which seems to be very powerful. Perhaps you can also equip such a weapon on your steel armor. The more Tony thought about it, the more insane he felt. Levis shook his head when he heard the words. I don't know, but such an explosion should have some effect on that destroyer. At this time, the 3 warriors of Asgard, Sif and Thor also approached. Warrior, it's unbelievable that you can unleash huge amounts of attacks with such power. Fandral looked in disbelief. It was enough to shock them that Levis could block the destroyer's beam attack just now. Unexpectedly, this is not an accident. The strength of the man in front of them is really beyond their imagination. The others also looked at him in shock. Levis smiled and waved his hand. It's just a small trick, not sure if it can solve the destroyer. He found that the destroyer in front of him may not be as perverted as in the comics, but he is also much stronger than the movie. It's hard to say whether the explosion just now can solve the destroyer. Thor on the side clenched his fist tightly. He was very unwilling. This was obviously something of Asgard, but in the end it had to rely on the midget. Soon the smoke cleared. Look. Hawkeye reminded everyone -517, his eyes fixed on the figure walking out of the smoke. Everyone followed his gaze. It turned out to be completely uninjured. The Little Naughty couldn't help but exclaim draw. The faces of the 3 Asgard warriors, Sif and Thor, became solemn. They are not surprised. After all, This is the armor of the god King Odin, and they have heard the legend about this armor since childhood. It's normal that such explosions don't do normal damage to it. Vice, what should we do? Should we use a nuclear bomb? Phil Coulson looked at Levis seriously. Hearing this, the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Not yet. Is there anything you can do? Phil Coulson was a little surprised to hear this. In fact, the question of launching a nuclear bomb was asked by Nick Fury, and it would be great if it could be solved without launching a nuclear bomb. Warrior, can you still use the attack just now? But even that attack is useless to the destroyer? Fandral frowned. I know. Levi's nodded. That was just a tentative attack. 99. What? Question mark. When everyone heard his words, they were stunned for a moment. It was only a tentative attack that could trigger such a powerful explosion. Just now? Did something go wrong? Chapter 113. Sign into the destroyer and become an armored warrior from today. The destroyer is coming. The little naughty screamed roar, making everyone who was originally shocked come back to their senses. Warrior, use this for you. At this time, Fandral handed over the one-handed sword in his hand. I think, with your ability to move and space just now, plus our weapons should be able to deal with the destroyer. 35. To allow a swordsman like Fandral to hand over his sword to the policeman, it shows that he has a lot of respect for Levi's. Most Asgard people are people who worship force. Once they are recognized by the other party will pay the highest respect. I don't think so. Levi's waved his hand in rejection. There are many ways he wants to deal with the destroyer, all without weapons. And don't forget that he just signed into Thor to get the super ability of weapon strengthening. How strong is LV5's weapon strengthening? Even if he just picks up a stone, it can be used as a magic weapon. No, you may not know, although our weapons are not as strong as Mjolnir, but they are also made by the dwarf casting master, enough to break through the armor of the destroyer. 99. Fandral shook his head and said, is that so? But I still don't feel the need to. Levi's shrugged. Sif on the side saw that the destroyer was getting closer and closer, and the two of them were still discussing this issue and suddenly became anxious. Hey, Thor, where are you going? Sif shouted suddenly, because she found that Thor had actually walked out, facing the destroyer. Loki, I know it's you. Listen to me. Stop the destroyer. Otherwise it will bring war to Asgard. Thor came to the destroyer and shouted loudly. The destroyer stopped when he heard the words. Hey, Thor is coming back soon. Fandral shouted anxiously when they saw Thor rushed up. Levi's was also a little surprised, but he didn't expect Thor to rush up at this time. Just when Thor thought that Loki heard his words and stopped the destroyer, he saw that the destroyer had a big ear in his backhand. The defenseless Thor was swept away in an instant. At the same time, in Asgard, Loki, the manipulator of the destroyer, sneers, and his target is never Thor alone. Asgard's three warriors, Sif and that human, he would not let them go. Thor. 35. The four of Sif were shocked by a roar, and then rushed up. However, the destroyer would not let them go, only to see the energy gathered in its eye sockets again to release the energy beam. Game over. At this moment, Levi's suddenly appeared in front of the destroyer, and he held down the destroyer's head so that it could not release the energy rays. At the same time, a hand knife slashed towards the neck of the destroyer. PSST. It is obviously a palm, but under the weapon strengthening, it is sharper than any weapon. The destroyer's head was easily chopped off like tofu. It's done. Levi's turned around holding the destroyer's head, only to find that everyone's jaw dropped in shock. Obviously, the powerful energy explosion just now didn't hurt the destroyer, but now the destroyer's head was taken off in the blink of an eye. This is too much of a play. It feels a little unreal, but the fact is in front of them, and they have to believe it. After taking off the destroyer's head, the entire armor stopped. At this time, suddenly the thunder flashed in the sky, and a thunder flew over from a distance. Be careful. Fandral pulled Sif away. Immediately afterwards, the thunder light went straight to Thor, who wanted to lie on the ground. Boom. In an instant, the whole sky suddenly became overcast, and thunderclouds rolled. Thor, who had been knocked out, instantly transformed himself, and Thor officially appeared in front of everyone. Thor, who was covered in lightning, suddenly raised Mjolnir. I am Thor, for the glory of the North. Thor raised Mjolnir with a high roar, then looked at Levi's. No, it was indeed on the destroyer beside him. However, after seeing that the destroyer's head was gone, he was stunned. Congratulations on your success in getting your power back, but it seems to be a little late. The destroyer has been resolved by me, Levi's said with a smile while holding the destroyer's helmet. When Thor saw this, he felt a little aggrieved. He had already regained his strength. It was time for him to pretend, but he didn't expect that the enemy had already been dealt with. But he didn't think too much about it. Come on, let's go to Bifrost. I'm going to settle accounts with Loki. Thor picked up the hammer and walked towards the Bifrost teleportation point. The three warriors, Sif and Asgard, also followed after seeing this. Wait, Thor, I think their warriors should be able to help us. Fandral suddenly stopped Thor. Thor looked at Levi's after hearing the words, and then said, I don't think so. I can solve it. This was originally Asgard's business, and the destroyer had already brought huge amounts of destruction to the midgets. How could he be embarrassed to ask others to help? Levi's raised his eyebrows when he heard this. In fact, he still wanted to go to Asgard to see it. It would be better if he could sign in. Leaders how? Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered that he hadn't signed in today. Looking at the destroyer on the side, he decided to sign on the destroyer. Asgard can go anytime. If the destroyer is taken back, it will be difficult to see. Ding. Does the host sign into the destroyer? Exclamation mark 99. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability armor incarnation, with 100 experience points. After getting this ability, Levi's quickly understood the usefulness of this ability. Simply put, the armor incarnation is able to form an armor outside the body, which feels somewhat similar to the armor warrior, and the style of the armor can be changed at will. If you were to be an armor warrior, no one would doubt you. Chapter 114 Ghost Rider finds the door again. Seeing Thor rejected his proposal, Fandral could only sigh regretfully. Warrior, I thought I could fight with you again. But now it seems that I have no chance, but I will not forget that our battle is not over yet, and I hope to be able to fight with you again next time. Fandral said with a serious look. Levi smiled and nodded. There will be a chance. 35. He wasn't in a hurry to go to Asgard. There would be a chance later anyway. And as long as he has been there once, he can use space movement to travel to and from Asgard at will. Heimdall, did you hear that? Heimdall, turn on Bifrost. At this time, Thor had already started calling out to Heimdall on Bifrost. After a long while, something strange appeared in the sky. I saw the clouds in the sky revolving like a funnel, accompanied by bursts of lightning. Great. Heimdall responded to us. Sif and the others were very happy to see this. Vice, thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have woken up so quickly. After the Asgard matter is settled, I will definitely invite you to Asgard as a guest. Thor patted Levi's on the shoulder and said very seriously, I'll be waiting for 520, so you'd better say goodbye to your little girlfriend. Levi smiled and looked at Daisy, Jane and the others who were driving over. Thor nodded when he saw this, and after a brief farewell to Jane and the others, the five disappeared in front of everyone. Okay, the mission is over, it's time for us to go back. Levi stretched his waist, and then smiled with his arms around the little naughty. Since Vice mission is over, why don't we stay here for a few more days? Okay, little naughty obviously doesn't want to go back so soon. Well, that's fine, he agreed after thinking about it, and it was just a few more days to play anyway. On the other hand, Tony was planning to secretly bring the destroyer home that had fallen on the ground. But Phil Coulson obviously won't let him take the destroyer so easily. The destructive power of the destroyer is obvious to all, and SHIELD also needs to study this powerful weapon very much, and Nick Fury told Phil Coulson early on that he must bring back the wreckage of the destroyer. Seeing that the two were arguing endlessly, Levi's ignored them and left first with the little naughty. At night, Levi's, who was sleeping comfortably, suddenly woke up. He looked up at the roof opposite the window, and saw a flaming skeleton riding a motorcycle looking at it from a distance. Ghost Rider? Levi's frowned, wondering why Ghost Rider would find him, but decided to take a look. Gently helping the little naughty cover the quilt, he moved to the opposite roof in one space. Johnny, what do you have to do with me? He said a little annoyingly. Give me the deed of Street Van Gonzalo. Ghost Rider's hoarse voice roared, and then two chains were whipped over. What's your nerve? 35. Levi's looked at him in surprise, wondering why he was crazy and wanted to snatch the contract of Street Van Gonzalo. But as punishment for disturbing him so late, he was prepared to teach Ghost Rider a lesson. Freeze. 35. In an instant, the air froze into ice and quickly spread to Ghost Rider. The two chains attached to the fire of hell were frozen in an instant, and in the blink of an eye along the chain, Ghost Rider was frozen in ice. Hellfires are powerful and can burn the soul. But Levi's freeze mastery isn't a vegetarian. After becoming LV5, each of his super abilities is extremely powerful. Freezing hellfire is simply too easy. Boom. 35. Levi's came to Ghost Rider, frozen in ice. Perhaps because of being frozen, Johnny quit the Ghost Rider transformation state. Can you speak well now? He waved his hand to lift the freeze, and Johnny instantly fell to the ground and shivered, apparently because he was not lightly frozen. Anyway, I have to get the contract of Street Van Gonzalo, Johnny said with trembling teeth and very firm eyes. Cut. It's boring. Seeing that he didn't say why, Leviston turned around and was ready to leave. Wait. Johnny suddenly fell to his knees and stopped him. Levi stopped in surprise. Please, help me, Johnny said with a struggling expression. I need the contract of Street Van Gonzalo, because the witch heart demon has captured Roshan, and if they don't bring the contract back, they will definitely kill Roshan. So it is. Levi's put his hands on his chest and touched his chin, thinking that if he took the Street Van Gonzalo deed, Johnny would have nothing to do with it. But he didn't expect wuxiap to find him anyway. Although I sympathize with Johnny, it is impossible for him to hand over the Street Van Gonzalian contract. I said, you wouldn't be so naive to think that if you hand over the Street Van Gonzalian contract to the witch heart demon, he will let you go. Levi sneered with his arms crossed. However, I have no choice, if I don't take the Street Van Gonzalian contract back. 35. With that said, Johnny clenched his fist tightly and slammed it on the ground. and blood slowly flowed out, but the wound soon recovered as before. I don't think you need to take the street van. Gonzalo did back. Levis shook his head. Johnny's face turned ashen when he heard the words. However, at this moment, an evil aura suddenly appeared not far from the two of them. Chapter 115 Witch Heart Demon comes to the door. On the roof of the roof, an evil aura suddenly appeared. Wuxiap appeared in front of the two with 3 subordinates. I didn't expect that the contract of street van Gonzalo would be in the hands of an ordinary person. It really made me find it for a while. The Witch Heart Demon looked at Levis with a gloomy expression. Damn, Wuxiap, you actually followed me? Johnny gnashed his teeth and looked at Wuxiap, wishing he could tear a piece of flesh from him. Ha ha ha, I can take your words as a compliment to me. But you are useless now, Wuxiap said, raised his hand and waved, and a black mist shot at Johnny. Feeling threatened, Johnny turns into Ghost Rider again. And after that black mist touched the fire of hell, it was instantly burnt out. If you listen carefully, you can hear countless mourning sounds in the black fog. Levis watched this scene with great interest. The black mist just now was not simple. If he guessed correctly, it should be a curse magic. The curse had been placed on Johnny even before he knew it, but apparently the curse had no effect on him. Thinking of this, he suddenly became interested in Wuxiap Demon. It just so happened that it was past midnight, and the number of check-ins had also been refreshed. Ding. Does the host sign into the Witch Heart Demon? Sign in. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability curse, with 100 experience points. Is it a curse? Levis was a little surprised and didn't expect that he had just obtained the ability of curse. After checking it, he found that the curse was not much different from what he understood. Inflicts a curse on the target. The effect depends on him. It can be to make the other party feel the pain, or it can be to let the other party die instantly. So can the other party die if they don't have sex? This is a question worth thinking about. However, Wuxiap Demon didn't have so much time for him to think about it. How dare a mortal take away the contract of Saint Van Gonzalo that he was determined to win, which was simply an insult to him. Wuxiap said coldly, go, take the street van gangster contract back from that mortal. Hearing the order, the bald earth demon among the 3 subordinates behind him took the lead and stood up. Follow the order, my lord. The bald earth demon strode towards Levis, and the concrete around him continued to cling to him as if it had life. It only took a moment to make him a rock giant more than 4 meters tall. Huh, it's quite intimidating to be so big. Levi sneered with his arms crossed. The earth demon didn't have any nonsense. He picked up his fist and slammed it from top to bottom. Seeing this calm expression, Levi stretched out one hand, ready to take the punch. On the other side, Wuxiap laughed when he saw that he actually wanted to use a mantra as a chariot. Stupid human, go to hell. However, what surprised him the next second was that the Earth Demon's punch was actually blocked, and for some unknown reason, the Earth Demon's entire body made of rocks collapsed and disintegrated in an instant. In an instant, the Earth Demon fell to the ground with a dazed expression. It's really stupid, but it's not me who is stupid. 9. Levi smiled dismissively, but threw a hellfire backhand at the Earth Demon. The Earth Demon, who was still stunned, was instantly enveloped by the fire of hell. The Earth Demon struggled frantically in the fire of hell, but it didn't work at all. Seeking flowers. His hellfire is only stronger than Ghost Rider, and he can't break free with the strength of the Earth Demon, but it is burned to ashes in a moment. Hellfire. Why are you a mere mortal? The Witch Heart Demon didn't react to the Earth Demon's death. Instead, he was very concerned about the fact that Levi's even used hellfire. Before Levi's could speak, the Witch Heart Demon said again, could it be that you have also become my father's lackey? 35. The contract of Street Van Gonzalo is in the hands of this human being, and he only needs to sign a contract to become a Ghost Rider, which explains why the other party will also have hellfire. 0. When Johnny on the side heard this, he subconsciously thought so too. Otherwise, why would Levi's get hellfire? Levi's folded his arms and smiled disdainfully, and there was no need to explain. The idiot of the Earth Demon is really too careless, and I still have to let me do it. The Water Devil was not frightened by the fire of hell, but when he waved his hand, the water vapor in the air immediately gathered to form ice thorns suspended in the air. The Water Demon waved his hand, and the next moment, 10,000 arrows were fired. Numerous ice thorns shot out in volley. The large-scale attack completely enveloped any corner Levi's could dodge. However, he had never thought of avoiding it, and still just stretched out one hand to face the incoming ice thorn. Immediately afterwards, golden flames erupted, and the ice thorns were melted by the flames before they approached. The temperature of the golden flame reached hundreds of thousands of degrees. If Levi's hadn't controlled the spread of the temperature, the surrounding area would have caught fire in an instant. The mere Water Devil's ice thorns simply tickle his flames. Mountain. Chapter 116 Witch Heart Demon, I am the regenerative healing factor. Seeing that his ice thorns were directly vaporized, the Water Devil suddenly looked confused. However, before he could think about it, the golden flames all over the sky burned. 99. Just like the Earth Demon, the Water Demon was instantly burnt to ashes in a burst of wailing. At this moment, Xifeng, the last subordinate of Wuxin Demon, suddenly shot out several wind blades. The high-pitched sound was unusually harsh. Wind, 35. Aware of the sneak attack of the evil wind, Levis was stunned for a moment, and then he burst out laughing. Actually, I can also control the wind. After finishing speaking, he used the vector operation to control the direction of the surrounding wind to gather together, and the wind blade of the evil wind was controlled by the vector operation as soon as it came over. A large amount of wind condensed behind him in the shape of 5-2 into a pair of huge glowing white wings. Levis looked at the wings behind him with interest, and a strange feeling came. Originally, he didn't know what the role of Accelerator's white wing was. Could it be that he was stronger in fights? But where is the strength? Now that he finally knows, with this pair of white wings, he obviously feels that the surrounding vectors are easier to manipulate. To put it simply, White Wing has increased the upper limit of his vector operation, followed by being able to fly and shoot the light wing as a weapon. What kind of ability is this? Wuxin Demon and Xifeng both looked at him in shock, and the two demons at the moment even had a feeling of facing Angel. You don't need to know what ability, try my heart move. Levi smiled faintly, and the white wings behind him shot out countless white feathers. In an instant, the bodies of Xifeng and Wuximo were all pierced through countless holes. There is no big problem with the regenerative healing factor, but the evil wind on the side suffers. His body was pierced into a sieve, and his entire head was smashed to shreds. Although his resilience was strong, he couldn't recover from this injury. Mortal, how dare you hurt the future Lord of Hell? I curse you. Your body will start to rot little by little, and eventually turn into a pool of pus and blood and die. Your soul will be controlled by me. I will stop day and night torment your soul. The vicious oath kept coming out of Wuxinma's mouth. Don't think that he was just cursing. In fact, it was just that he was casting a curse. I saw a cloud of black mist quietly enveloped Levi's body, and then scrambled to drill into his body. However, these black mists can't find the entrance no matter what. Even the mouth and nose can't get in. Vector maneuvers are well defended against curse attacks, which makes him very satisfied. Immediately afterwards, a red flame erupted from his entire body, and these cursed black mists met the power of the phoenix like a mouse met a cat, and they were instantly burnt to nothing. Wuxinmo looked at the red flame that flashed in front of him, and couldn't help but feel a palpitating feeling in his heart, as if he had encountered something terrifying. It seems that the curse has no effect on me. Levi's looked at the witch heart demon with disdain. Then it's your turn. After he finished speaking, Wuxinmo didn't wait for him to speak, and saw that his one hand became a claw, and countless winds gathered in his hand, finally forming a white ball of light. Well, it looks like a spiral pill, but it doesn't matter. The witch heart demon eat my ball. Immediately, Levi's came to the witch heart demon, and then pressed the white ball of light toward the witch heart demon's abdomen. In an instant, the witch heart demon was blasted out, and at the same time, the light ball instantly became larger after it was released. Boom! When the ball of light finally reached the critical point, it exploded, and in an instant, a white light caused the surrounding to become daylight. Wuxinmo's entire body was blown to pieces. Okay, it's done. Levi's clapped his hands and smiled. No, that guy doesn't have a soul in his body, so he will never die so easily. At this moment, Ghost Rider reminded. As predicted, at the place where Wuxinmo disappeared, a black mist gathered, and Wuxinmo appeared in front of the two again. Ha 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 tilde, I'm a regenerative healing factor. How can mortals kill me? Wuxin Demon laughed wildly. Regenerative healing factor? Levi's touched his chin and looked at the witch heart demon with interest, but he forgot that the witch heart demon and the regenerative healing factor were here. However, there is no so-called real regenerative healing factor in this world, but no solution has been found. He was as strong as a phoenix and was scattered, not to mention he was a little devil. Thinking of this, I saw him move with one hand. After using Storm's weather control, the sky was instantly covered with dark clouds and rolling clouds. Boom! A ray of light came first, and instantly hit the witch heart demon. Wuxinmo didn't even have time to scream, and his whole body was scorched black. However, this was not enough to kill him, but his body recovered in a short time. Mortal, I said you can't kill me. Ha 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 tilde. Wuxinmo laughed wildly. However, before he could finish laughing, several lightning bolts struck his forehead again. Mortal, you annoyed me. Wuxinmo, who was still a little proud just now, was struck by several lightning bolts without the slightest temper. Okay, it's time to end. Levi's didn't want to play anymore after seeing this. Wouldn't it be a good to go back and hug his wife to sleep? 4.1 I saw him wave one hand, and the fiery red phoenix power turned into a small phoenix and burned towards the witch heart demon. Feeling the palpitating power again, Wuxinmo's complexion changed greatly, because he felt the fear of death. This was the first time he felt this kind of fear after obtaining the regenerative healing factor. However, before he could do anything, the small phoenix came to him in the blink of an eye. Don't look at it as a small phoenix, but the flames that erupted instantly enveloped Wuxinmo's whole body, and the heart-piercing screams didn't last long. In just a moment, Wuxian demon was burned to ashes. Chapter 117 The Arrogant Witch Heart Demon. Okay, it's time to end it now. Levis yawned when he finished, and got ready to go back to sleep. Wait. Johnny stopped him at this moment. Huh? If you want to find your girlfriend, go find it. Now that the witch heart demon is dead, no one can stop you, Levis said a little annoyingly. No, I meant to say that. Johnny pointed anxiously in the direction of the witch. Levis frowned and turned to look, but saw a cloud of black mist slowly gathering from all directions, and the witch heart demon actually came back to life again. Oh? You can even be resurrected like this? He looked at Wuxian demon with interest. It seemed that the other party's regenerative healing factor really had something, and even the power of the phoenix couldn't completely kill it. The witch heart demon is a regenerative healing factor because it has no soul. It is very difficult to kill him, Johnny explained solemnly. However, Levis did not think so. Although the power of the phoenix could not kill him all at once, it was because the root of the witch heart demon was in the underworld. Unless he is killed in the underworld, as long as there is still power, he will be resurrected again. Humans, you can't kill me. The resurrected Wuxian sneered a few times, and then waved his hand, only to see a few Trask carrying a woman over. Roxanne. Johnny yelled when he saw the woman. Let her go. If you want me to let her go, you only need to snatch the Street Van Gonzalo contract from that man and give it to me, otherwise you will know the consequences. Wuxian grabbed the woman's neck and smiled sinisterly. You're actually playing this trick with me? Levis was a little surprised, but he didn't expect that the witch demon would use a woman to threaten Johnny. He was a little curious about Johnny's choice. Should he continue to look for him desperately, or should he calm down and think about countermeasures? After Johnny heard Wuxian demon's words, his face suddenly turned gloomy, and with his strength, he could not pose any threat to Levis at all. Even if he tried his best, he could not get the contract of Street Van Gonzalo, and he knew this very well. But what to do now to save Meng Shan? For a moment Johnny was sweating profusely. If you give that woman back to him, what if I give you the deed of Street Van Gonzalo? Hearing this sentence suddenly, Johnny's whole body was shocked. He looked at Levis in disbelief, but he didn't expect the other party to be willing to help him. Levis is definitely not trying to help Johnny, but just a message from the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One, asking him to hand over the Street Van Gonzalo pact to the Witch Heart Demon. Although he doesn't understand Ancient One's approach, he doesn't care. It's the same for everyone. Is this true? Wuxian was a little overjoyed, but he didn't expect his threat plan to be successful, and the other party actually took the initiative to hand over the contract of Street Van Gonzalo to him. Definitely, I mean what I say. Levi smiled and nodded. No, I can't trust you, unless you can give me the Street Van Gonzalo contract first. Wuxian thought about it for a while, but still felt a little unstable, so he proposed to get the Street Van Gonzalo contract before releasing him. Johnny was immediately anxious when he heard it, but he didn't expect Wuxian to make such an excessive request. What if he got the deed of Street Van Gonzalo and wouldn't let him go? However, Levis readily agreed. No problem, I'll give it to you. After speaking, he simply threw the Street Van Gonzalo contract over. After Wuxian Demon took over the contract of Saint Van Gonzalo, he immediately checked it in a hurry. That's right, it's the real Street Van Gonzalo contract. Wuxian confirmed that there was no problem with the contract, and immediately looked ecstatic. Human, you are really stupid. I didn't expect to believe my words so easily. Witch Heart Demon laughed wildly. Johnny on the side said angrily, Wuxian, return Liu Oshan to me quickly as agreed. I'll give it to you if you want. Wuxian glanced at him, and then threw the woman out of his hand. Definitely, this is not his sudden kindness. He has no intention of letting go of everyone present. Stupid mortal, pay the price for your stupid behavior now. The witch mind looked at Levis and laughed loudly, and then opened the Street Van Gonzalian contract. In an instant, countless sinful souls rushed out of the contract, and these souls were obtained by Ghost Rider's trial of sinners. If released, each of them can become the most vicious spectre. Although Levis didn't know why the Lord of Hell collected as many worst souls as before, he knew that the other party must have no good intentions. And at the moment, countless worst souls are free from the bond. They scream, grin and exude terrifying negativity. If ordinary people come into contact with these most evil souls, they will be seriously ill, or they will lose their lives. However, after the appearance of these worst souls, they were all sucked into the body by the Witch Heart Demon. That's it, I feel an unparalleled power. Wuxian felt the constant influx of power in his body, and only felt that there was no longer his opponent in this world. At this moment, his ambition had swelled to the extreme. Really? Why do I feel like you just changed from an ant to a strong ant? Levi sneered with his arms crossed. Mortal, how dare you underestimate the future Lord of Hell? The Witch Heart Demon was full of anger, and he vowed to teach this hateful human a lesson. As soon as he finished speaking, a large amount of black mist was released from his body, and the black mist formed an incomparably huge giant in the night sky. Mortals feel the fear. Wuxian laughed proudly, and then a giant fist made of black mist smashed down from the sky. Madness. Levis spat out 2 words with disdain, without the slightest sense of dodging. It was at this time a cold voice suddenly remembered. Witch Heart Demon, now you have countless souls in your body that can burn. I don't know when Ghost Rider sneaked around behind Wuximo, grabbed Wuximo directly, and the fire of hell burned instantly. 39. Feeling the pain that has never come from the soul, Wuximo can't believe that he is the regenerative healing factor, but at this moment he feels the threat of death. Chapter 118. The Lord of Hell, Mephisto comes. Seeing this, Levis shook his head. The regenerative healing factor of the Witch Heart Demon was a little tricky, unless it kept killing him and draining his power, until his source of power was completely exhausted. Otherwise, it is impossible to completely kill Wuxin Demon. And after absorbing the worst soul in the contract of Street Van Gonzalo, the Witch Heart Demon gave him, who had no soul, a soul. This power did make him very powerful, but it also broke his regenerative healing factor. A Witch Heart Demon with a soul cannot escape the burning of the fire of hell. In the hobby of pain, Wuxin's eyes widened, and he fell down with an unwilling face. Roar Tilda, this time it's really over. Johnny gasped and looked at the fallen witch, then walked towards Liu Oshan. He's going to take Roseanne out of here. However, at this moment, applause suddenly came from behind. Add $1 carrot. Clap clap. My servant, you are doing very well. 99. Hearing this voice, Johnny's body froze, and then he slowly turned round. However, Wuxinmo actually stood up again. How is this possible? Johnny's eyes widened. He couldn't believe that the Witch Heart Demon could be resurrected after being burned by the fire of hell. Levis on the other side looked at the resurrected Witch Heart Demon with interest, and he obviously found that the Witch Heart Demon in front of him was obviously different from just now. Since it doesn't work once, let's do it again. Johnny gritted his teeth, and then turned into Ghost Rider again to try to repeat the old trick. However, Wuxinmo looked at him very calmly and said, "Stupid. Do you want to use the power I gave you to deal with me?" What? Hearing this sentence, Johnny was obviously stunned for a moment, and then he seemed to have thought of something and his complexion suddenly changed. Are you Mephisto? Mephisto, the legendary Lord of Hell, is a powerful being on the same level as Odin and Ancient One. And Ghost Rider's power is derived from Mephisto. It is true that Johnny is Mephisto's servant. Ghost Rider, you did a great job. Mephisto looked at Johnny with admiration. If he hadn't killed the Witch Heart Demon, I'm afraid that Mephisto's idea of hitting the real world would still have to wait for an opportunity. Turning to look at Levis, Mephisto's entire body of hellfire suddenly surged and surrounded him. After the fire of hell disappeared, Mephisto's attire was completely different from the previous Witch Heart Demon. I saw that he had dark red skin all over his body, he was wearing red armor, his hair was a bunch of hellfire, and he had huge horns like horns. This is exactly what Mephisto was originally. Human, you actually have the power of the Phoenix. This really surprised me. Mephisto looked at Levis with greed in his eyes. Everything that happened before, he saw through Wuxinma's eyes. The human being in front of him actually had the power of the Phoenix, which really made him crazy with jealousy. Mephisto has seen the power of the Phoenix Force, an ability that surpasses them. He was fortunate enough to get some Phoenix power, which enhanced his strength. You must know that he is the Lord of Hell, and it is extremely difficult to improve his strength. But he did not expect that a small fragment of the power of the Phoenix could actually increase his strength. This really made him a little unbelievable. At the same time, it also inflated his ambitions. At the level of the Heavenly Father, Mephisto's strength is considered to be the weaker one. Definitely, it's much weaker than Ancient One and Odin. For countless years, he has been trying to invade the human world, but every time he is easily suppressed by the Sorcerer Supreme, it will go to hell. And this time the strength has increased greatly, making his ambitions swell again. As long as he gains some more Phoenix power, then he is confident that even the Ancient One cannot stop him from ruling the human world. In the same way, Levis was a little surprised when he heard Mephisto's words. So you also have the power of the Phoenix? Since Mephisto said so, it also proves that he knows the power of the Phoenix, and maybe he also has the power of the Phoenix. Levi's Phoenix power needs to devour energy in order to restore the previous powerful power. If he can devour Mephisto's Phoenix power, then his Phoenix power will definitely become stronger. Yes, it seems that you understand. If I read it right, you should be a powerful mutant. With such a powerful power in a human body, if you are willing to sign your name on the contract of Street Van Gonzalo, maybe after I take away the power of the Phoenix, I can save your life and make you my servant. People. Mephisto finished speaking with a proud look on his face, as if it was an honorable thing to be his servant. Levis couldn't help laughing when he heard this. I said, Mephisto, you are too arrogant. Just because you want to make trouble in the world? Why do you think you can appear so smoothly now? Real world? If it was him facing Mephisto alone, he would indeed have some emptiness in his heart. But this time he wasn't alone. The Ancient One had already come, but Mephisto didn't notice it. If Ancient One hadn't reminded him just now, asking him to hand over the Street Van Gonzalian contract to Wuxin Demon, he probably wouldn't have discovered the existence of Ancient One. Maybe the Ancient One could stop me in the past, but after testing, I have now determined that the Ancient One today is simply too busy to take care of itself, and there is still time to take care of me. Even the heyday of the Ancient One will not be my match, as long as you have access to your Phoenix power. 35. Mephisto, Lees, laughed loudly, as if everything was under his control. Testing? That is to say, the witch heart demon is doing things in the human world, and you did it on purpose? Levi's frowned and guessed. Yes, I have wanted to invade the human world for thousands of years, but every time I was blocked by the Ancient One. And the witch heart demon is doing things in the human world, but it has not been discovered, or there is no magician to stop it, which means that the information I got before is correct. The Ancient One has long since died. In battle with Dormammu, Mephisto had previously been informed that the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One had died in battle with Dormammu. It is precisely because of this that he will arrange the move of wuxiap. The purpose is to test whether the Ancient One is still there or not. He was very satisfied with the result. Ancient One had already died and bought it. Chapter 119. The Arrival of Ancient One. The true body of the Lord of Hell. Now there is no one on earth who can stop me. The whole world will be ruled by me. 39. Mephisto laughed wildly, and the ground of his colleague turned into a lava abyss at this moment. Looking down from the top, you can even see countless demons in hell, struggling to climb up in the lava. At the same time, the endless fire of hell also spewed out, spreading out in all directions. In an instant, the entire building was turned into a magma hell. I said, "Are you too happy too soon?" Levi's didn't panic. A pair of white wings flapping gently behind him sent him flying into the sky. On the other side, Ghost Rider also rode his motorcycle and took Roshan out of the building. "Human, I'll give you one last chance. Hand over the power of the Phoenix and I can spare you from dying." A pair of fiery red demon wings spread out behind Mephisto and flew into the sky. Levi's ignored him, but said indifferently, "Ancient One, the next thing is left to you." Hearing the name Ancient One, Mephisto's pupils visibly shrank, and he looked around carefully. Mirror space. It turned out that they were no longer in the original town, but in a mirror space 520. Here, no matter what damage is done, there will be no impact on the real world. Ancient One? This is impossible. You were clearly injured and died in the battle with Dormammu, and even the breath has dissipated. Why did you appear here? Mephisto's eyes widened, looking at Ancient One who appeared beside Levi's in disbelief. Suddenly, he calmed down, and after carefully looking at the Ancient One in front of him, his face was full of surprise, as if he had discovered something. Ancient One, if I read it right, you are only in the state of your soul now, which means that you have given up your body. 35. It seems that the news I got is correct. You have indeed been seriously injured and died in the battle with Dormammu, but you survived using your soul state. Mephisto said and couldn't help laughing again. When Levi's heard these words, he could not help but look at the Ancient One beside him, and he found that the Ancient One had indeed lost his body. Beside him was nothing but a mental phantom. This surprised him. Would the Ancient One with only the soul body still be Mephisto's opponent? If the Ancient One can't stop Mephisto, I'm afraid the whole world will turn into hell. Seemingly seeing his worries, Ancient One said calmly, "Don't worry too much. He won't succeed." Seeing Ancient One's calm appearance, he finally felt relieved. Ancient One, no one can stop me this time. 35. Mephisto laughed and continued, "Don't forget that I am the Lord of Hell, the master of all souls. Any soul will tremble in front of me, and you dare to appear in front of me in the form of a soul?" Speaking of this, he suddenly became angry. "Are you underestimating me?" Obviously everyone is at the same level, and he is the Lord of Hell who has lived for countless years. In terms of age, he is a well-deserved senior. However, a junior dared to despise him so much. How could this make him not angry? Hearing this, Levi's heart that had just been put down was raised again. Mephisto was right. The fire of hell specially restrains the soul. Whether the Ancient One can beat him today is not certain. It is very likely that Ancient One is not a match for Mephisto. Indeed, it's almost impossible for me to defeat you now. Ancient One nodded in agreement. "What? Ancient One, don't cheat on me." Levi's was shocked to see Ancient One admit that he was no match for Mephisto. "Don't worry, there's Vice." Ancient One smiled calmly and did not panic. "Me? No kidding, Xb. I don't think I can beat Mephisto." Levi's shook his head. According to his understanding, the lowest level of God further is an explosive star, which is a bit worse in terms of his current strength. It's not that he can't explode a star. If he uses ability to take it slow, he is confident that he can destroy a planet. But to reach the level of destroying the stars at hand is still a lot worse. Unless he can completely control the power of the Phoenix in his body, he may be able to easily destroy the planet with the power of the Phoenix. Seeing this, Ancient One couldn't help but smile and said, "No, I believe in you. I have a secret technique here that can help you control the Phoenix power within your body. With this, I believe you will be able to control the Phoenix power within your body." 5. Really? Levi's was a little surprised. How to control the power of the Phoenix in his body has always been a very headache for him. Although the power of the Phoenix can be suppressed by vector operations, if the Phoenix does not surrender, it will be difficult to use the power of the Phoenix. Moreover, it is also necessary to worry about the problem that the Phoenix Force cannot continue to suppress the Phoenix Force after the energy absorbing becomes stronger. If he can really control the power of the Phoenix, then he has great confidence to defeat Mephitos. Ancient One nodded and said, "Definitely, magic is very mysterious. Let go of your brain. I will give you the secret method to control the power of the Phoenix." Hearing this, Levi's frowned a little hesitation. To know that if you let go of the protection of the brain, it is equivalent to showing everything in front of Ancient One. That is to say, as long as the Ancient One wishes, he will no longer have any secrets to speak of. "Vice, I know your concerns. I won't peek at your memory, please rest assured, and I'm just giving you the secret method. It won't take much time." Clearly, Ancient One understood his concerns very well. But if he wants to learn the secret technique in a short time, he can only pass all the ways of using the secret technique into his mind. Otherwise, it would take a long time to learn this secret technique. In the present situation, it is simply too late. During Levi's hesitation, Mephisto wouldn't be watching. Seeing that Ancient One had found a way to deal with him, he was also a little anxious. If the human being in front of him really completely controls the power of the Phoenix, maybe he is really not an opponent. With his understanding of Ancient One, the other party will not aimlessly. "Ancient One, you can't succeed," Mephisto roared, and the whole body burst into hellfire. Then in the fire of hell, a gate to hell was opened. A huge claw like a mountain stretched out from the gate of hell. Chapter 120 Integrate the power of the Phoenix to easily kill Mephitos. Seeing this, Levi's gasped, "What kind of monster is this?" The Ancient One on this side explained, "That is Mephisto's true body. The true Lord of Hell. Once he is released, the whole world may turn into a hell." 5. "Then why do you want me to give him the deed of street vent?" Gonzalo. Levi's frowned. Hearing this, Ancient One shook his head and said, "Vice, as you can see, I'm already dead, and only the soul remains. And I've already told you, I'm going to leave Earth, and once I leave, no one can stop Mephisto. Rather than passively waiting for Mephisto to come, it's better to draw him out and thwart his conspiracy." After hearing this, Levi's couldn't help frowning. He knew that Ancient One was right. Once she was not on Earth, Mephisto would invade the human world without any scruples. By that time, I'm afraid no one will be able to stop Mephisto. Thinking of this, he looked at Mephisto, who had drilled half of his head out of the gate of hell, and finally made a decision. "Sorcerer Supreme, I believe in you. Teach me the secrets." Ancient One looked at him admiringly after hearing this, and then she quickly tapped Levi's forehead with her finger. "It's ready." "Is that all right?" Levi's didn't even have time to react before it was over. "Yes, the secret method to control the power of the Phoenix is already in your mind." Ancient One smiled and nodded. Levi's closed his eyes. Sure enough, the secret method to control the power of the Phoenix completely appeared in his mind. After checking it, he found that this secret method is extremely complicated. After all, it belongs to the top-level spiritual power control secret method. If an ordinary magician wants to learn, it will take at least a few decades, and he must have a very good understanding. If Levi's is asked to learn, even if he has a super brain, he cannot learn it in a short period of time, even at least a few years. Under the indoctrination of Ancient One, he instantly learned this secret technique. Thinking of this, Levi's was very pleasantly surprised. It seemed that he made the right bet, and while it was a bit risky to open his mind directly to the Ancient One, he wasn't completely defenseless. Once he finds any problem, he can react immediately. Besides, he is quite trustworthy for the Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One. So far, he's got it right. Seeing that half of Mephisto's body has been drilled out of the gate of hell, he no longer wastes time, and directly starts to control the power of the Phoenix by using the secret method. "Don't try to control me." Phoenix seemed to sense the danger and began to struggle violently. Boom! I saw the power of the Phoenix burning involuntarily around him. Levi's ignored the Phoenix's struggles and continued to use the arcane spell to restrain her. As expected of the top-level essence mystery technique given by Ancient One, it is really domineering. Under the suppression of the secret technique, Phoenix's struggles are getting smaller and smaller. Soon he has completely controlled the power of the Phoenix in his body. Definitely, this is not over, because the power of the Phoenix has not completely surrendered, and there is a risk of rebound at any time. You must lay your own spiritual imprint on the power of the Phoenix. However, this step is very difficult. If he fails, he may even be attacked by the Phoenix. And at this step, he has no way out. In order to completely control the power of the Phoenix, he must do so. A powerful spiritual force poured into the Phoenix Force, and in the deepest position, the Phoenix girl was trying her best to resist the surrounding barrier full of strange runes. This is the magic seal formed by the secret method given by the Ancient One. For the current Phoenix, it is impossible to break free in a short period of time, but it may not be possible in the future. In order to completely solve this potential threat, Levi's spiritual body came to Phoenix Girl and said, "Phoenix, Surrender to me. I can restore your previous powerful posture, and even become stronger. If you want me to surrender, stop dreaming. 39. Phoenix glared at him, with no intention of surrendering. As for Phoenix, Levis is a robber, she was just robbed. Levis frowned when he heard the words, and it seemed that he had to resort to violence. His thoughts moved, and the next moment, the barrier full of strange runes shrank in an instant, and in the blink of an eye, it was directly bound to the Phoenix girl, causing the flames all over her body to go out and she became naked. Seeing this, his eyes lit up. This figure is really good. The Phoenix body actually has no gender and entity, but it has been in Kinjil's body for a long time, so it will transform into a human form. The humanoid appearance is very similar to Jean Grey, but she looks younger and more beautiful, and her body proportions are perfect in every part of her body. Wow, is that Levis has never seen such a perfect woman. Let go of me. 9. The shackled Phoenix girl was still struggling. Her temper was too stubborn, but he liked it. Phoenix, surrender to me quickly, otherwise I can only use the last resort. The last resort that Levis said was to use mental power to forcibly imprint the Phoenix on the body, which was very risky. While saying this, his hand involuntarily climbed up to Gao Feng. Phoenix looked at the hand in front of him, and for some reason his body couldn't help but tremble, and a strange feeling hit his heart. Levis was a little surprised to see her reaction, and then moved. This time Phoenix's reaction was even bigger. At this moment, it seemed that the person in front of him was not a Phoenix, but just a little girl. Levis became more and more interested. Several days have passed in the spiritual world, and less than a minute has passed in the outside world. Suddenly, Levis released the power of the Phoenix from his entire body, and the entire sky was enveloped by the power of the Phoenix. This ... is that human really controlling the power of the Phoenix? Mephitos, who had just climbed out half of his body, looked at the power of the Phoenix in shock. At this moment, he felt an unprecedented threat. But this also made him want to get the power of the Phoenix possessed by this human being even more. He could see that the power of the Phoenix possessed by this human being was very powerful, much stronger than the power of the Phoenix he had obtained. It might even be the Phoenix itself. In the end, greed still overcome the sense of threat, and Mephitos used all his strength to climb out. If the Ancient One hadn't used magic to delay his time, I'm afraid he would have come out of the gates of hell long ago. At the same time, with the explosion of a large amount of Phoenix power, Levi's body suddenly disappeared. Is it killed by the power of the Phoenix? Johnny, who was watching all this from a distance, stared at the flames in the sky, and secretly guessed in his heart. Ancient One did not panic when she saw this scene. She believed that Levi's would be able to succeed. The power of the Phoenix shone across the sky, and then the power of the Phoenix began to shrink. Eventually a huge amount of flame Phoenix soars in the sky. Chirp tilde. The Phoenix roared loudly, and the loud voice even penetrated the mirrored space. At this moment, the whole world seemed to be able to hear this chirping sound that went straight to the soul. Immediately afterwards, under the gaze of Ancient One, Johnny and Mephitos, the Phoenix flashed and instantly changed back to the appearance of Levi's. Success. Ancient One saw this scene, and his face was filled with a gratified smile. However, when Mephitos saw this, he only felt that the human being in front of him was a greater threat to him, which made him have to be cautious. However, at the moment, he finally stepped out of the gate of hell, and successfully let the real body come to the human world. This was the first time in his history that his real body had come. At the same time, Levi's kept looking at himself. In the past few days in the spiritual space, he finally made the Phoenix completely surrender. Due to an accident, he and the Phoenix were completely integrated, but it was also a blessing in disguise that allowed him to perfectly control the power of the Phoenix. It can be said that at the moment he has not lost to humans, but has become a god. 35. Suddenly there was a flash of fire beside him, and a Phoenix in a fiery red dress appeared beside him, looking at him tenderly. No one could hold in his eyes. Phoenix, let me deal with this big guy first, and then I'll accompany you. Well, Levi's took Phoenix's small hand and said softly, Phoenix didn't say much, nodded and then turned into a cluster of flames and penetrated into his body. Phoenix's submissive appearance was completely different from before, thanks to the reason why he completely conquered Phoenix in the spiritual space. Thinking of this, Levi's couldn't help feeling a little proud. Not thinking about this, he looked at Mephitos and said lightly, Mephitos has made you wait for a long time. Now I want to return your words to you just now. Hand over the power of the Phoenix, and then go back to the underworld. I can spare you. Although his tone was flat, his words were full of domineering. Hearing this, Mephitos's face was gloomy. Boy, you are still too young. Do you think that you can be arrogant in front of me if you control the power of the Phoenix? It seems that you don't intend to obediently call out the power of the Phoenix. Then I will let you see if I have the ability to be arrogant. 39. Levi's is too lazy to talk nonsense so much. I saw him wave his big hand, and the flames in the sky instantly formed a flame phoenix, which burned towards Mephitos, which was hundreds of meters high. Humphrey, I want you to see the fate of underestimating me. Mephitos snorted coldly, and then also waved out the flames of hell in the sky to form a huge incomparable flame beast, rushing towards the flame phoenix. Seen from a distance, the flame phoenix is not a single star smaller than the flame behemoth. The two flames collided together, and an astonishing thing happened. I saw that the flame beast was instantly shattered by the flame phoenix, and at the same time, the fire of hell was completely absorbed. How is this possible? Mephitos looked at this scene in disbelief. He really did not expect that the fire of his own hell was directly swallowed up. The flame phoenix that devoured the fire of hell even expanded in a circle, and then charged towards Mephitos again. At this moment, the sense of crisis in Mephitos' heart became stronger, and with his huge amounts of body, he couldn't dodge at all. In desperation, Mephitos could only wave huge amounts of demon wings with all his strength, and in an instant the strong wind roared, and even the tall buildings on the ground were blown away by this hurricane. Seeking flowers. However, this has absolutely no effect on the flame phoenix. With a scream, the power of the phoenix instantly turned into flames that surrounded Mephitos. Damn. My power. Mephitos, who was burned by the power of the phoenix, was terrified, because he found that the power of the phoenix did not burn him, but absorbed his power. To make matters worse, the power of the phoenix in his body kept struggling as if it had been summoned, which made him a little confused. Stop me. Mephitos was incompetent and furious. But there was nothing he could do. The power of the phoenix is too domineering, and any force that approaches will be completely absorbed, and his magic is no exception. Soon the power of the phoenix in his body finally broke through the bondage. As if returning to the embrace of his mother, the power of the phoenix was absorbed in an instant. Boom. After the flame phoenix absorbed the power of these phoenixes, it became obviously stronger. Mephitos, who was scorched by the phoenix flame, finally let out a wailing, because in just a short while, most of the power in his body was sucked away. And the power of the phoenix is still constantly being absorbed, and if it goes on like this, he will probably be sucked dry. At a critical juncture, Mephitos resolutely prepared to escape. Want to run away? Seeing Mephitos turning around and wanting to go back from the gate of hell, Levis couldn't help sneering. Just come and go, it's not that easy. I saw him dodging and came to Mephitos, followed by a punch. Boom. Mephitos, who was completely unprepared, was instantly blasted out by this punch. Damn human, give me death. Seeing Levis blocking the gate of hell, Mephitos's face was fierce, and huge amounts of demons grab slammed down. Madness. Levis spit out two words lightly, and then slammed it out with a punch using Victor operations. Boom. As expected, Mephitos was blown away again by a punch. The strength of Mephitos, who was blown away, became weaker and weaker. Seeing that he could not go back, he said viciously, I will curse your body to fester little by little. Your 5 internal organs begin to rot, the blood turns into pus and blood. You will die in agony, and your soul will fall into hell and be tortured by me forever. Curse. As expected, father and son, both would play this kind of rude tactics. Levis shook his head disdainfully. If it was the curse of the previous level police officer, he might have been a little threatening to him. But now that he has merged with Phoenix, no matter how strong the curse is, it is useless to him. As predicted, a large amount of black mist suddenly appeared around him. But these black mists were absorbed by the power of the Phoenix before they approached. The Phoenix force is not picky about food. This curse is just sending him energy. Seeing that the curse he cast with his last power had no effect, Mephitos suddenly wanted to vomit blood. Immediately afterwards, in the burning of the power of the Phoenix, Mephitos wailed and was reduced to ashes. The flame Phoenix roared again, then turned around and charged towards Levis, and when it got closer, the flame Phoenix instantly merged into his body. Boom. A more powerful Phoenix force burst out, and after absorbing a Phoenix force and all the power in Mephitos, his strength became even stronger. He clenched his fist and felt this incomparably vast power. Levis was excited. With his current strength, I am afraid that even Odin and Ancient One may not be his opponents in their heydays. Vice, congratulations. At this moment, Ancient One came to him and said congratulations. This is also thanks to Ancient One Magician, your secret method. Otherwise I wouldn't have had such an easy control over the power of the Phoenix. 35 Levis laughed out loud. Seeing this, Ancient One also smiled and said, I am afraid that your current strength has surpassed mine, and the future of the Earth will be handed over to you to protect. Isn't there a new Sorcerer Supreme? Although Levis pursues great power, he is not interested in making him the protector of the Earth. Vice, with great power comes great responsibility. The new Sorcerer Supreme has not grown up yet, so it needs your help. 35. Okay then. Seeing that Ancient One had said so, he was embarrassed to refuse. After all, he was able to fuse with the Phoenix thanks to Ancient One's secret techniques. Ancient One finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that he agreed. Although you killed Mephitos this time, he will still be resurrected in the underworld, but it will be many years before he regains his strength, so don't worry about the threat from hell for the time being. Ancient One Magician, now can you tell me why you died? Levis asked with interest. He is also very interested in Dormammu, the ruler of the Dark Dimension. Having been able to fight with Ancient One for so many years, it can be seen that Dormammu is at least a strong mountain of level Godfather police. Chapter 121 Ancient One leaves, creating artificial intelligence. Miss Misaka. After a moment of silence, Ancient One explained. Do you know Dormammu, the ruler of the Dark Dimension? Dormammu heard. Levi's nodded. Ancient One was a little surprised to hear that. The name Dormammu is generally impossible to hear, because few people know it. But she didn't bother about it. When Dormammu invaded Earth some time ago, although I managed to repel Dormammu, I was killed by Caecilius, a believer of Dormammu, Ancient One said with a calm expression. And then? Levi's couldn't believe that the Ancient One would actually be killed by Caecilius, and stabbed to death anyway. Although drawing on the power of the Dark Dimension strengthens my strength and life, it also binds me, so I will take this opportunity to give up my body, Ancient One explained lightly. That's it. Levi's touched his chin and nodded. This explanation is almost the same. It is unbelievable that he was stabbed to death with a knife or something. Aren't you surprised? Ancient One asked strangely. Surprise? Surprised what? Levi's asked rhetorically. You should understand what the power of the Dark Dimension represents, right? What does it mean? Makes people crazy, or makes people fall into the dark abyss? Levi's smiled and shrugged, then added, maybe this happens to other magicians, but you're the Sorcerer Supreme, aren't you? Power is never good or bad, only those who use it. Perhaps there is something wrong with Ancient One's approach. After all, she once ordered that no magician can learn dark magic. The reason is to prevent the magicians from removing the power of the Dark Dimension. Because once the power of the Dark Dimension is removed, they will lose themselves and become followers of Dormammu. Just like Holy Place magician Caecilius. And why Ancient One is not afraid, that is because she can control the power of the Dark Dimension and will not become a believer of Dormammu. 523. Ancient One could not help but appreciate him even more after hearing these words. It would be great if Levi's could become the Sorcerer Supreme and protect the Earth after she left. Too bad he refused. However, Ancient One does not insist on this kind of thing. If the new Sorcerer Supreme she is looking for can grow up, it can also protect the Earth in her place. Vice, what you said is very good, but there is actually another reason for me to do this, and that is to lure out the potential threat of Mephitos, and then solve it, so that I can leave with confidence. 35. Levi's frowned when he heard this. He still didn't understand why the Ancient One had to leave Earth. Ancient One seemed to understand what he was thinking, so he took out a green gem that looked like an eye. This is called Eye of Agamotto, which allows me to see the past and the future. But the future is obviously not optimistic. What happened in the future? Could it be that aliens invaded Earth? Levi's guessed that a certain purple sweet potato essence might be coming, but with the strength of Ancient One, it should be a very simple matter if you do not want the purple sweet potato essence to get all the Infinity Stones. This shouldn't be a big disaster. Ancient One shook his head and said, taking it is just a small matter. 99. Levi's thought to himself, so what's the real big deal? Vice, you have to know that the Eye of Agamotto can't see everything in the future. Ancient One shook his head, his face suddenly serious. But we can see from some things that we will face the future. A huge amount of catastrophe, a catastrophe that engulfed the universe. That's really bad. Levi's frowned when he heard this. He really couldn't figure out what else could threaten the entire universe after the purple sweet potato essence. Is it Dormammu, or the Celestial Group, or the Court of Life? Vice, I see hope for the future in you and many people, but it's not enough. I'm going to find more people who can face this catastrophe. Ancient One turned around and looked at him with a solemn expression. Road. Levi's mood was also a little heavy when he heard this. Okay, now that the things to do are almost done, I should leave too. After the Ancient One opened a portal, he planned to leave. But at this moment, Ghost Rider, who was not far away, suddenly stopped her. Sorcerer Supreme, please wait. Do you have anything else to do? Ancient One asked, pausing to step into the portal. Johnny looked at Levi's and then at Ancient One, then got down on one knee and pleaded, Sorcerer Supreme, please help me. You want to get rid of Mephitos' control? Ancient One said lightly. Yes. Please help me with Sorcerer Supreme. Johnny nodded. Although Ghost Rider is a servant of Mephitos, almost every Ghost Rider signs a contract by himself. But there is no doubt that every Ghost Rider actually wants to escape Mephitos' control in his heart. It's a pity that once you sign a contract and become Ghost Rider, you can no longer get rid of the control of fate. Now that someone has wiped out Mephitos, and the legendary Sorcerer Supreme is right in front of him, Johnny is full of hope for breaking free from the bondage of the contract. I see, go find the new Sorcerer Supreme, he can help you. I'm running out of time now. But when Johnny heard this, he was a little anxious, and to find the new Sorcerer Supreme, he must go to the holy place of magicians, Kamar-Taj. But that place is not a place that he, a demon, can go to. I'm afraid he has just approached the 3 holy places, and he will be discovered by magicians who jumped out of nowhere, and then he will be besieged by swords and halberds. I know your concerns. Ancient One obviously knew about Johnny's difficulties, and then she looked at Levi's and said, Vice, aren't you going to Kamar-Taj too? Why don't you take it with you? him. 5. Is it necessary to be so troublesome to just open a portal? Levi's clearly didn't want to bother with Johnny. I'm dead in Kamar-Taj, and if it reappears, I'm afraid it will cause unnecessary disturbances. Well then, 35. Seeing that Ancient One had said so, he was too embarrassed to refuse again. Leave this to you, Ancient One said, and took out a magic badge with the Eye of Agamotto inscribed. With it, you are a full member of the Priory, and it is not difficult to meet the new Sorcerer Supreme. 99. Levi's nodded after taking the badge. The Priory, he knew, was an organization formed by the magicians of Kamar-Taj, and only the core members would have such a badge. Then, I should leave too. Ancient One looked at Levi's with a complicated look, then turned around and walked into the portal. Although the Eye of Agamotto can see the past and the future, the Ancient One found that he could not see the future of the mutant with the power of the Phoenix at all. But after this series of contacts, maybe this mutant can turn the tide in the future catastrophe. It is precisely because of this that Ancient One specially researched the secret method to control the power of the Phoenix and handed it over to him. After the Ancient One left, the mirror space disappeared. Levi's and Johnny and Meng Shan are back on the roof of reality. However, upon returning, they found that they had been surrounded. A large number of police cars appeared downstairs. The roof was already full of police officers, and there were even several helicopters hovering in the sky. The three people who suddenly appeared immediately attracted everyone's attention. The three people who suddenly appeared over there, please put your hands where you can see them and undergo routine inspections. In a helicopter, a policeman shouted loudly with a loudspeaker. However, before he could finish speaking, Phil Coulson honked the horn beside him. Let me handle it. Phil Coulson got off the plane after saying that, and then he waved his hand, and the lights around him suddenly shifted away. Vice, I didn't expect you to be here. What happened just now? I also want to ask, what exactly are you doing in such a big battle? Levi's arms crossed his chest and looked unhappy. He was lit by so many lights just now. If Phil Coulson hadn't come in time, he would have tried to teach these people a lesson. Phil Coulson scratched his head in embarrassment. It's like this, because a bird chirping sounded all over the world just now, and an abnormal energy fluctuation was detected here, so the director ordered me to check it out. After a while, no problems were found. 99. Oh? Levi's was a little surprised. Birds chirped all over the world. Could it be when he turned into a phoenix just now? Thinking about it like that, he thought it was very possible. Although it was in the mirror space of Ancient One just now, it is not surprising that it affected the real world when it was transformed into a phoenix. You are late. The crisis of destroying the world has been solved by me. Levi's waved his hand indifferently and turned to leave. The crisis of destroying the world? Hey, wait a minute. You explained clearly. Phil Coulson quickly followed with a puzzled face when he saw that he was about to leave. Johnny, here's my contact details. I'll talk about going to Kamar-Taj later. For now I just want to go back to sleep. After speaking, Levi's yawned and turned to leave. Johnny didn't talk nonsense either, took down the contact information and left with Roseanne. Hey, wait a minute. Tell me what's going on. Phil Coulson followed behind 99. However, the next moment, Levi's disappeared on the rooftop. This scene gives Phil Coulson a headache, and he has to report the findings to Nick Fury. How does this make him report? The next day, woke up early in the morning by Phil Coulson knocking on the door. Levi's got up reluctantly and opened the door. Vice, today you should talk about what happened after you finished it. You must know that this matter affects the whole world. Phil Coulson saw him and started talking about Bala. God knows he's done because he didn't sleep all night because of the investigation. Sometimes he wondered if his hair was falling out because he was worrying too much. Okay, then I'll just explain it briefly. The way Levi's was entangled, he had to explain what happened last night. Vice, wait a minute. Phil Coulson hurriedly pulled out his laptop and hooked up to Nick Fury's video. Director, what happened last night? You should listen to Vice himself. Phil Coulson said hurriedly after opening the video call. Nick Fury nodded when he heard the words, then looked at Levi's and said, then let's start, Vice. Well, then I'll just say it briefly. Last night Ghost Rider found me. After killing the Witch Heart Demon, the Lord of Hell Mephitos appeared. What is the Lord of Hell? Nick Fury couldn't help but interrupt him. The Lord of Hell is Mephitos, the mythical one, Levi's explained. Mephitos, the mythical Lord of Hell? Nick Fury and Phil Coulson are a bit confused. How can mythology be involved? But thinking of seeing the real Thor before, it is not unacceptable to hear Mephitos, Lord of Hell. Okay, don't interrupt me. No problem. You continue. Nick Fury waved his hand for him to continue. Levi's took a sip and continued. After Mephitos, the Lord of Hell, appeared, I destroyed him with the Sorcerer Supreme. Then what? After waiting for a long time without seeing him, Nick Fury asked suspiciously. And then? Then it's gone. Levi's shrugged. Nick Fury's head was full of black lines when he heard the words. This is the so-called simple explanation? This is too simple. I want to ask who is Sorcerer Supreme? Seeing that he didn't want to explain further, Nick Fury had to ask who the Sorcerer Supreme was. Sorcerer Supreme is Sorcerer Supreme. Her name is Ancient One. Well, I'm done. Levis stood up and went back to the room. Only Phil Coulson and Nick Fury looked at each other. Director, did you hear anything? Phil Coulson wondered. I hear a fart. Nick Fury's face was sore. How could he know who was who just based on the names just now? What, the Lord of Hell Mephitos came to Earth, and then Levis and Sorcerer Supreme destroyed the Lord of Hell together. Levis would have thought it was a fairy tale if it hadn't come out of Levi's mouth. Half a month passed in a blink of an eye. Levis and Naughty have returned to the Mutant Academy. The last time Tony promised to help him with the plans for the Sky Warship, it had already begun. The research site is in a cave that is being hollowed out, but it is impossible to start the experiment of the Sky Battleship immediately, and it will take a lot of time to prepare. As for the destroyer's armor, with the approval of Nick Fury, Tony was asked to study for a month. Destroyer armor must be returned to SHIELD after 1 month. Tony agreed without a second thought. After instructing Pepper to deal with other things, he plunged into the laboratory for retreat research. On the other hand, Levis also started his research in the X-Men's underground lab. Levis has been here for nearly half a month, and he spends most of his time studying artificial intelligence every day. That's right. He wants to create his own artificial intelligence to help him build a Sky Warship. Once the Sky Warship is built in 4.1%, then this artificial intelligence can also be used as the main program of the Sky Warship. To this end, he specially obtained the program code of JARVIS from Tony, and the price was to produce a large amount of end element matter for exchange. After getting the program code of JARVIS, Levi started half a month of research. And just today, his artificial intelligence finally succeeded. Come on, report the current status. Levi's ordered excitedly. Beep. A complex electronic sound sounded, and then a virtual projection was projected into the air. Misaka feels everything is fine now. May I ask if the master is connected to the internet? Misaka asked suspiciously. Why did you even learn Miss Misaka's oral fetishes? Levi's mouth twitched slightly. That's right. His artificial intelligence was created based on Misaka's sister, including the virtual projection of a little girl in Tokuwadai school uniform and goggles. But what's wrong with this Misaka sister's oral fetish? Because the master entered a lot of information about the catalogue of forbidden magical books. Misaka also found his origin, Misaka explained hard. So this is Levi suddenly realized that when he was designing artificial intelligence, he also set the story of the magical forbidden book catalogue into it. Unexpectedly, Misaka took the initiative to find his own character and learn it. But if there is a fetish, there is a fetish. He doesn't hate that. Misaka, start connecting to the internet. Misaka received an order to start connecting to the network. I saw Miss Misaka's whole body data flickered by the virtual projection, and in a short period of time, she had already obtained most of the world's data on her mobile phone. It can be said that the Misaka that Levi's painstakingly designed is definitely stronger than Tony's JARVIS. The master, Misaka, met the same kind, and Misaka said happily. Chapter 122 Levi's, Lauren, do it yourself. Similar? It's JARVIS. Levi's was a little surprised, but most of Misaka's code was taken from JARVIS, so it's not surprising that he treated the other party as the same kind. Cough cough. Misaka, you must never trust others to know about it. Even if it is the same kind, Misaka is the only one who can trust me. In order not to let his children and JARVIS learn badly, Levi's can only issue such an order. Misaka doesn't understand the master's words very well, so Misaka asked suspiciously. The current Misaka has just been born, and there is no emotional system implanted, so the understanding of ability is still very limited. Levi's is considering whether to develop an emotional system and implant it in Misaka in the future, but this matter is not in a hurry for the time being. You don't have to understand, just do as I say. Misaka level obeys the master's orders, Misaka said very seriously. 39. Levi's nodded in satisfaction. Come on, let's meet our genius Uncle Tony and see how his latest research is going. With that he left the basement. Misaka's host can only be temporarily placed in the basement, with the protection of the end element material created by him. Ordinary people can't destroy it at all. And there is a subroutine of Misaka in his mobile phone that can follow him all the time, and he can call out Misaka at any time when he needs it, which is very convenient. For this reason, he also specially installed a virtual projection function on the mobile phone. It took him a lot of effort to install this function on a small mobile phone. Vice, you're finally out. Polaris outside the underground laboratory looked a little happy when he saw him come out. Lorna, sorry, I haven't been with you for half a month. Levi's apologetically stepped forward and hugged Polaris. He has been studying artificial intelligence programs for the past 2 weeks, so that he has no time to accompany them at all. No need to apologize. I know you must be doing something very important. Polaris shook his head with a smile. You can understand it. Levi's kissed her softly. By the way, Vice, I still don't know what you are busy doing these days? Polaris asked curiously. Well, let's talk as we walk. Levi's put his arms around her waist and left the lab. Along the way, He briefly explained the existence of the artificial intelligence Misaka. My god, Vice, you actually created artificial intelligence? The artificial intelligence North Star definitely knows it. It stands to reason that this idea is just a guess for the time being, and it will be at least a few decades later. Unexpectedly, Levis has already realized it now. It's not really surprising, Tony has already researched it. 35 Levis shrugged, without any pride. The technology in this world is really derailed a bit, just like the whole world doesn't have a full smartphone. But Tony has even come up with high technology such as virtual projection and artificial intelligence. This really makes me speechless. And his Misaka was also created based on the program code of Jarvis, which is something to be proud of. Although he is confident that he can create artificial intelligence if he is allowed to create artificial intelligence from scratch, it just takes a little more time. He was just a little lazy, so he just took the code of Jarvis and used it. That's an amazing thing. Polaris still praised with a look of admiration. Although Levis took such compliments very well, he was a little embarrassed by it. Vice, you are finally willing to come out of the laboratory. At this time, the oncoming little naughty and Clarice saw him and ran over in surprise. The experiment will definitely come out. 35 Levis helplessly shrugged and smiled. Finally done. Great. I thought you'd be in the lab like that guy from Tony. The little naughty finally breathed a sigh of relief when he heard his words. How is that possible? I'm not relying on technology to eat. Levis was a bit dumbfounded. Just because he didn't want to stay in the laboratory every day, he would find Tony, a tool man, to prepare the sky battleship for him. Also, the Misaka system was developed because I wanted to be lazy. Congratulations. Clarice congratulated with a smile. Thank you. Levi stepped forward and kissed Clarice on the cheek. Clarice was always so gentle. The little naughty on the side was a little unhappy when he saw this, folded his arms and pouted. Seeing that, Levi's couldn't help but give her a dry Humphrey. The little naughty snorted with satisfaction. Fortunately, you came out early, otherwise Katie and Lauren would be taken away. Oh? What's going on here? Levi's was a little confused when he heard this. Although he used to be indifferent to the beauties around him, the other party would take care of them when they came to the door, and it didn't matter if they didn't. But now his attitude has changed a little, like Katie and Lauren beside him. He can't say that he doesn't have any interest in them. Before, it was just because of Xianyu's mentality that he was too lazy to move, but after integrating the power of the Phoenix, he became a little overbearing in his heart. Rather than watching Katie and Lauren enter someone else's arms, it's better to accept them all. Anyway, I have 3 women, and I don't care about 2 more. And there is a spiritual hint, and there is no need to worry about betrayal. Vice, you really have thoughts about Katie and Lauren, the little naughty said with some jealousy. Forrid. He had no reason to object to this. That's right. After class just now, Katie was called away by Colossus, and Lauren was called away by John. Clarice took the initiative to explain for him. I see. In the original book, Colossus had an idea for Shadowcat, which was not surprising. What surprised him was that John, the kid, even set his sights on Lauren. Wasn't this guy's lesson last time enough? He even dared to rob a woman from himself. It seems that he needs to be taught a lesson again. Thinking of this, Levi's knew the location of the 2 with the telepathic sweep, and then walked towards the nearest. Katie, Polaris, Little Naughty, and Clarice, who were behind them, looked at each other in dismay, and they had no choice but to follow. They simply have spiritual hints, but they have no other ideas. They are just a little unhappy and jealous. It didn't take a few people to arrive at the location where Colossus and Katie were. From a distance, they were talking about something. Levi's listened intently. Colossus, please tell me if you have anything. Katie looked at Colossus with her arms crossed. Cough. Katie, you know that I'm not very good at communication, but I want to give you this painting, Colossus said and handed over a painting in his arms. Katie was curious and looked at the result portrait. It was exactly what she was painted on, and it looked pretty good. Thank you. I love it. Katie smiled and thanked. Cough that. Katie. Colossus hesitated for a long time without saying a word. Do you have anything else to say? If not, I'm leaving. Katie looked puzzled. Seeing that she was about to leave, Colossus finally said in a hurry, well, Katie, do you like a guy who is big and strong, but is not good at communicating? 99. Hearing this, Katie was a little surprised, but Colossus actually confessed to him. She had a look of hesitation. If it was before, she would definitely refuse without hesitation, but since she knew that Levi's chose Clarice, she was very disappointed. Although she never said it, in fact, she has always had a crush on Levi's in her heart. After all, there has never been a man as good as him in the entire Mutant Academy. But during a chat with Mary, she actually found out that Mary had become Levi's woman, and not only that, but Lorna too. This shocked her. After all, this is still a monogamous world, and she can't imagine having 3 girlfriends at the same time. And most importantly, she could hear from Mary's words that there was no contradiction between the 3 girls. It was as if the 3 of them tacitly agreed to become Levi's women together. Katie has stopped a lot of things about rich people taking care of several lovers, but she has never seen someone like Levi's. This also made her very entangled, not knowing whether she wanted to join or not, and she felt that it would be difficult to accept if she joined. So all this time, Katie has been very confused. Now facing Colossus' confession, she once again remembered this irritating thing. "Katie, what are you talking about?" At this time, Levis and Polaris came over together. Katie's hesitation expression just now made him feel a sense of crisis, but luckily, he used telepathy to check Katie's mind, and only then did he realize that Katie had liked him a long time ago. It's just that he hasn't shown it, which makes him very satisfied. "You finally came out?" For some reason, Katie, who was still a little troubled just now, was subconsciously pleasantly surprised when she saw him. Seeing her hesitation just now, and her surprised expression now, Colossus didn't know anything yet. "Sorry, Katie, I'm leaving first." 35 Colossus turned and left. "Hey, you're drawing." Katie had planned to return the painting to him, but she didn't expect Colossus to run so fast. "That's a nice painting." 35 Levi's looked at the painting in Katie's hand and complimented. "I'll pay him back later," Katie explained. "We decided to go out and have a good time. How about going with us?" 35 "Definitely, how could this kind of thing be without me?" 39 Katie agreed without a second thought, completely forgetting her previous troubles. "Okay, then let's go to Lauren and ask her if she wants to go with her." Levi's laughed. "Okay." Katie nodded with a smile. After a while, a few people came to the grove on the playground. "You guys wait here first, I'll call Lauren," Levi's said to Katie and the others with a smile, then turned around and walked towards the grove. Seeing this, the children could not help but look at each other. In the woods, John was trying to explain something to Lauren. "Lauren, why don't you like me? Is it that I'm not strong enough? I'm one of the best in school." And Lauren heard a lot of John Bala's words, and suddenly interrupted him with a bit of annoyance. "Can you be as strong as? Are you as good as him? You are not worthy at all." John was speechless when he heard the naked words. But the boss is already a little naughty. John looked aggrieved. He was snatched away by Levi's before, and he was also taught a lesson. Unexpectedly, pursuing Lauren was hit again. At the moment he really wanted to cry. "Anyway, even if I were to be his lover, I wouldn't choose you. Just die." Lauren folded her arms and remained unmoved. John was even more shocked to hear this. Levi's felt sorry for John when he saw this scene, and was just about to teach him another lesson, but it seemed that it was no longer necessary. "Lauren, so you are here." 33 Then Levi's came out. "Vice, you're finally not staying in the lab?" Seeing him approaching, Lauren ran over in surprise. "Yeah." Levi's nodded with a smile. "Boss." John at the moment was frustrated, but he didn't expect to confess that he was bumped by Levi's again, and he still liked the girl of the boss. Cough cough. "John, I remember there were a lot of little girls who admired you in school, right? Why don't you try to accept one of them?" Levi's coughed dryly. John is very popular in school, and it is normal for many girls to like him, but he didn't expect John to bump into himself twice. "That's unfortunate enough." John was stunned for a moment when he heard the words, but he said that too. There were indeed many girls who came to him to confess, but they were all rejected by him. So next time a girl asks him to confess, he can totally accept it. Thinking of this, John finally regained some confidence. "Thank you, boss." "Haha, you just want to understand." Levi smiled and waved his hand. "Then boss, you talk first, I'll go first." John ran away. "Vice, why did you come to me all of a sudden?" Seeing John leave, Lauren asked curiously. "It's like this, I'm going to go out with Mary, Lorna and the others, so I came over and asked if you want to go with me." Levi's explained with a smile. "Is it just that?" Lauren pouted and looked a little angry. In fact, she also knew about Lorna and Clarice and Mary becoming his women. It's just that with the open mind of the West, she doesn't care about these things. She is already 16 years old, and she just wants to give the first time to the man she likes. After all, in the West, it is a very shameful thing to have not handed over your first time at the age of 16. You can do whatever you want. Levi's used telepathy to know what was in her heart and felt helpless. This is the Western way of thinking. As long as you have a feeling, you can immediately hand over yourself. Who cares what happens after that? Does not being a virgin affect marriage anyway? But Levi's cares. Fortunately, he can use spiritual cues. As long as he becomes his woman, he can't run away. This is something that can't be changed in his life. Is anything really possible? Hearing his words, Lauren immediately hugged his neck with joy and pressed it up. "Definitely, but not now. They're still waiting for us." Levi's shrugged. "Okay then." Lauren let go of her hand after hearing the words, and then walked out. When everyone was here, Levi's smiled and said to everyone, "So where are we going to play?" "Go to the amusement park. I think the bar is good." "Go to the karaoke hall. I think it's more fun to go shopping." Everyone expresses their opinions. After listening to their words, Levi's immediately made a decision. "Okay, let's all go one by one." "Great. But don't we have classes in the afternoon?" Katie raised the question. "Definitely skipped class." The little naughty waved his hand indifferently. "Yes, Vice is the leader of the X-Men. He took us to skip class, so Mr. Rolo won't say anything." 35 Clarice is also relieved. "Then we're off." Levi smiled and stretched out his hands, and the girls embraced him. The next moment, They appeared on the bustling streets of New York. First, Levi's took them to the streets for a while, then went to have a big meal, went to the amusement park in the afternoon, and then went to the bar and karaoke hall in the evening. At the end of the day, Levi's felt a little tired, but the girls were still very excited. In the evening, Levi's took everyone to a luxury hotel. After a hard day with my children during the day, it is time for him to enjoy it at night. Get me moving, Lauren. Move fast. 35. Lauren rolled his eyes at him. I'm tired already. Tired? I didn't see you tired from shopping during the day. Levi's pouted. I can't. You go to them. 35. Lauren said that. Just put it down. This made Levi's very angry. Chapter 123 System Upgrade. Go to Kamar-Taj. After playing with Lorna and Lauren for a few days in a row, Levi's finally remembered that he was going to visit Tony. Use space to move to Tony's seaside villa. You are welcome, Mr. Levi's. As soon as he came here, the artificial intelligence JARVIS took the initiative to make a move within RAW. JARVIS, long time no see. Levi's laughed. Suddenly, he remembered that he hadn't signed into JARVIS. So, ding. Does the host sign into the artificial intelligence JARVIS? Yes. Ding. Sign in successfully. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the super ability Brain Strengthening, with 100 experience points. Brain Strengthening? Levi's looked at it and found that this ability is a bit tasteless, but it is similar to the Super Brain, but it is weaker than the Super Brain. As his strength becomes stronger, the effect of some junk super ability is not very big, not to mention that he now has the power of the Phoenix. To be honest, his super ability is now a bit of a drag. It would be best if you could directly give double the experience. Levi's thought so. He can't use too many super abilities, and if all of them are replaced by double experience, the speed of his upgrade to LV6 can be directly half as fast. As long as the upgrade is LV6, he will be able to reach level Godfather with his super ability, but it is not weaker than the current Phoenix power. Ding. Does the host upgrade the system? What? The system suddenly made a sound, which surprised Levi's. What changes after the traditional upgrade? Ding. After the system is upgraded, the host can choose to sign into double the experience, or choose to sign into the super ability. Does the host upgrade? After getting the explanation from the system, Levi's was pleasantly surprised. Isn't this a drowsiness and a pillow? He just said that if he can sign up to double the experience, his upgrade speed can be doubled, but he didn't expect it to happen now. And you can also take the initiative to choose double experience and super ability, which is great. You can sign up for a super ability when you meet a well-known person or place. If you don't have any super ability you want, you can directly sign in for double experience. It's so convenient. System upgrade. Levi's chose to upgrade without hesitation. Ding. System upgrade. 1%. 50%. 100%. Congratulations on the successful upgrade of the host system. But the system has been successfully upgraded in the blink of an eye. Levi's looked at the system panel and found that there was not much difference. Host, Levi's. Super ability, vector operation, space movement, frozen control, flame control, energy absorption, electromagnetic force, evolution, telepathy, super infrasound, space reversal, atomic collapse, stealth, molecular manipulation, dragon incarnation, super brain, weather manipulation, vibration, end elemental matter, transcendence, mechanical heart, ionization, illusion, perspective, telekinetic cannonball, super speed regeneration, super speed, affinity, flexible, phoenix force, hellfire, marksman, weapon strength, Thor's power, armor incarnation, curse, brain strengthening, super ability level, LV.5, level 5 mutants, experience value, 2,800 100,000ths. It will take a long time to upgrade to LV6, but with double experience, the time can be shortened in half. Thinking of this, Levi's is in a good mood. Vice. Why are you here all of a sudden? At this time, Tony also came out of the research room under the reminder of JARVIS. He came over with a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. Haha, didn't this come to see you when I was free recently? Levi's unceremoniously took the glass and drank it. Tony raised his eyebrows at this, and drank it. I don't believe you came to see me specially. You want to know how your sky battleship plan is going? You know, this matter has always been handled by Little Pepper. You can ask her if you have any questions. 5. Tony obviously didn't believe he was just okay to come and see himself. The matter of the sky battleship is not in a hurry. I have found the most suitable person in charge for this plan, Levi's said with a mysterious smile, then took out his phone. A virtual light curtain was cast from the mobile phone, and then the image of Sister Misaka appeared in front of the two of them. Does the master need Misaka? Misaka asked suspiciously. Tony was a little surprised to see this. This is the product of the JARVIS code you were going to walk last time? I thought you would just make a copy of the J.A.R.V.I.S. Copy? Uncle Tony, you underestimate me immediately. In fact, I am also a mechanical genius. Levi smiled disdainfully and said, Although Misaka's creation borrowed the underlying code of JARVIS, the core code is all created by me. It can be said that my Misaka is stronger than your JARVIS. I don't know how many grades. 5. Yes, Tony shrugged undeniably, obviously in disbelief. You must know that JARVIS was only created by him unintentionally. At this stage, it is almost impossible for him to create it once. How could Levis be able to create another AI using just the underlying code? This is completely impossible. You do not believe? As Levis spoke, his mind moved, and the red wine bottle flew up and automatically filled the 2 glasses with wine. Are you here to say this? Tony made it clear he didn't believe he could create artificial intelligence. If you don't believe me, let JARVIS check it out. Okay, since you see this. Tony was actually a little curious. JARVIS to check if the other party is that powerful? Yes, sir. JARVIS agreed, and then launched an attack on Misaka. The general network simply cannot withstand the intrusion of artificial intelligence, unless it is physically blocked. If you want to know which artificial intelligence is stronger, you need to have a network attack and defense battle. Do. Master, JARVIS is trying to invade the core data. Do you block it? Misaka asked suspiciously. Definitely stop. Levis nodded. Do. Received the blocking order and was blocking. The blocking was successful. Misaka completed the mission and reported. 99. However, after a few seconds, JARVIS, who had been invited to the door of core data, was kicked out in an instant. Sir, the invasion failed. JARVIS reported at this time. How is this possible? Tony looked surprised, not expecting JARVIS to fail. Humphrey, I understand now, Levis said with a smug smile. Now Tony has to admit to his words that he has indeed created an amazing artificial intelligence. Well, you're here today to show off your Misaka? If so, you've made it. Tony was a little shocked, but he wouldn't show it. Definitely not. By the way, you have researched the destroyer for so long. Have you researched anything? Levi suddenly asked curiously. The last time the destroyer was thrown on Earth, Thor returned to Asgard with the 3 warriors of Asgard and Sif. It wasn't a big deal, but Bifrost was destroyed, and it was very difficult to fix Bifrost. So Asgard wants to take back the destroyer. I am afraid it is not a matter of a while. To be honest, I have no research on magic at all, and I haven't researched anything effective in the past half-month. Tony took a sip of wine and sighed helplessly. Originally, he planned to develop some valuable technology on the destroyer, so he also agreed to SHIELD to help them upgrade and transform the helicarrier. But this half-month research has yielded nothing, because the destroyer was not created using the technology on Earth at all. Instead used magic. Tony, who has no research on magic at all, can't even open his armor, which really blows him a bit. Oh. Is that so? Levis was not surprised by this, and even snickered inwardly. In fact, he thought about this problem early in the morning, but he didn't say it. Okay, I won't bother you to continue your research. I have to find Little Pepper and let my Misaka take over the Sky Battleship plan in an all-round way. Levis didn't chat for long, then he got up and disappeared into the room. Tony was a little helpless when he saw this. In his small villa, he was probably the only one who would come and leave if he wanted to. The other side. Levis found Pepper, who was busy in the office, and explained to her about using artificial intelligence to manage the Sky Warship project. Oh. Thank goodness, someone finally helped me to share, Vice. As the second shareholder of Stark Industries, you have the right to intervene in the company's affairs. You don't know that guy Tony spends all day in the laboratory. I don't care about anything, and there are all kinds of things thrown at me. I'm getting bored. Little Pepper was so happy to learn that he could not manage the Sky Battleship project. Bala kept talking. Levis was a little helpless. No matter what, he could only hear Little Pepper complaining. If you use Misaka to manage the Sky Battleship project, Miss Misaka will call whatever resources she uses, and come here to talk to Little Pepper, just for authorization. Otherwise, the company's resources are called, but it is not good to know who called it. After solving these things, Levis went to the underground research base to see how Magneto's machine research was going. Master, you are here. Marv and Phoebe noticed his arrival immediately. Well, how is the research institute lately? Is the research plan going well? Levis asked with a smile. Well, the recent research has been relatively smooth, but due to the lack of experimental subjects, Dr. Campbell and Dr. Stern asked to send some humans for experiments, but Dr. Radke was very opposed to this. Sophie answered hesitantly. Levis frowned upon hearing this. It was indeed cruel to use humans as experimental subjects. But if the experimental machine can make humans activate the X gene without side effects and become mutants, the lack of human beings as an experiment is indeed not enough. You can't use mice or something as a test subject. After all, this specifically activates the human X gene. So how did Mystique solve it? Levis asked suspiciously. She caught some criminals back. Phoebe answered truthfully. Well, that's fine. But remember that she should be more trained. It's better for her to go to the Middle East to catch some war crimes. Levi suggested. In the Middle East, Because the Ten Rings gang has made a mess, it is best to catch a few war criminals and use them as experimental subjects. These war criminals deserve to die. Understood, I'll tell Mystique. Sophie nodded. That's good, then let's go and see how the experiment is going. 35. Levi's nodded with a smile, and then accompanied by Sophie and Phoebe, went to the laboratory to check the progress of the research. At present, the machine that makes Magneto has been thoroughly studied by several scientists, and some improvements have also been made. According to the experimental report of the last experimental body, it is also possible to awaken the X gene to become a mutant. The drawbacks of genetic collapse still exist, but it is much better than the original machine, because this time the experimental body died after more than 10 days of genetic collapse. As a result, there has indeed been progress. Levi's believes that sooner or later a machine will be developed that will allow ordinary people to awaken the X gene's ability without side effects. After learning about the progress of the experiment, I chatted for a while under the entanglement of the two sisters Marv and Phoebe, and then returned to the Mutant Academy. Now that the X-Gene awakening machine and the Sky Battleship plan have already started to operate, he doesn't need to worry about it anymore. Then it's time for him to make a trip to Kamar-Taj too. He is still very interested in magic, and does not know what abilities can sign in at Kamar-Taj bring him. The next day, Levi's called together the X-Men and told them that he was going to go out. Knowing that he was going to Kamar-Taj, the holy place of magician, although everyone was very curious, he didn't say that everyone was embarrassed to go. Thanks to accompanying Lorna and the others a few days ago, they did not take the initiative to request a trip to Kamar-Taj. Still, Levi's promised to take them to Kamar-Taj in the future. Downtown New York. Levi's had just arrived here when he spotted Johnny. Yo, it's early. 35. Johnny said with a dark face, have you forgotten? I have been waiting here for almost half a month. In order to find a date to get rid of Mephitos' control, Johnny went to New York after settling Roshan after that day. As a result, Levi's asked him to wait, and this wait was half a month. Oh. Really? Then you must be having a great time in New York. Levi's shrugged and laughed. Johnny was speechless when he heard the words. Okay, no kidding, let's get in the car. What about your car? Over there. Johnny pointed to one side of the locomotive lane. We're not going to do this to Kamar-Taj, are we? Levi's face was full of question marks. I don't have another car. Johnny shrugged. Oh. Forget it, let me come. Levi's said and walked into a deserted alley, and then used molecular manipulation to start creating a bright car. Only the front of the car appeared out of thin air in the open space in front of me, and then the whole car slowly appeared from the front part. How? This scene made Johnny, who was a little careless, so shocked that his eyes were about to fall. Are you God? 9. God? Maybe. Levi smiled irrefutably. In just a few minutes, a silver Rolls-Royce Phantom appeared in front of the two of them. It's so cool. Johnny cannot like anything, but he has a crazy love for cars. Seeing these two silver Rolls-Royce Phantoms, he felt as if he had seen a lover, and couldn't help but gently stroked them. I said, can you stop acting like an idiot? We should go. Levi's couldn't help but complain. Okay, let me be the driver, Johnny said and entered the cab first. Levi's didn't fight him either. It would be best to have someone as a driver. By the way, do you know where Holy Place is going? I thought you knew. Johnny was stunned for a moment, a little embarrassed. Levi's was a little speechless when he heard the words. Could he say that he didn't know? He then remembered that he had forgotten to ask the location of the Ancient One Holy Place. However, according to the original plot, one of the 3 holy places in Kamar-Taj should be in the center of New York City. Go to downtown New York. Where is the holy place? Johnny asked suspiciously. It's not wrong. As long as you get closer to the entrance to the holy place, you should be able to find it. 35. Levi's touched his chin and said, well, that's all it takes. Johnny had no choice but to trust Levi's. Skilled in the ignition, the Rolls-Royce Phantom roared and rushed out of the alley. After a while, they had circled around New York. How is it? Did you find the entrance to the holy place? Johnny asked suspiciously when he returned to the original place. Well, I found that the alley we came out from just now should be the entrance to the holy place, Levi's said while rubbing his chin. What? Johnny was stunned when he heard what he said, and then he was speechless. Then why do we have to turn around? Chapter 124. New York Holy Place. Magician who can't melee is not good magician. It's just some small mistakes, don't take it too seriously. 35. Levi's waved his hand awkwardly. No one thought that the alley just now was the entrance to the holy place, so he didn't pay attention to that alley just now. Johnny had no choice but to drive the Rolls-Royce Phantom back to the original alley again. The alley is a dead end, and there is no holy place entrance at all. There seems to be magic set up here. 99. Johnny clearly felt the breath of magic. Levi's nodded. Yes, there is indeed a peculiar power here. I think it should be the power of magic. Do I need to unlock the magic first to get in? No, just rush in. 55. Are you sure? Johnny looked at him in surprise. Definitely. Levi's nodded definitively. It is not difficult to brute force this kind of magic. Okay then. Johnny nodded and turned into Ghost Rider just to be on the safe side. Immediately after, their silver Rolls-Royce Phantom also began shape-shifting. The fire of hell wrapped the body. The body of the Rolls-Royce Phantom became hideous. The front of the car became a huge amount of skulls, and the tires were also burning with fire of hell. Hey, looks good. Levi's compliments. Sit still. Johnny was a little proud, and then stepped on the accelerator. The engine roared powerfully, and even the 4 exhaust pipes at the rear of the car burst into blue flames. Boom! With a roar, the car slammed into the wall in an instant. If this is really a wall, I'm afraid they will be hit with gold stars. However, when approaching the wall, a circle of ripples appeared on the wall. Levi's directly used the powerful mental force to open the magic prohibition. In an instant, the car actually got into the wall and disappeared. When they reappeared, they were already on a street with a Central European century architectural style. The portal is actually open on the street. What the hell is this? Didn't the person who set up the portal consider that it would cause a car accident? Boom. The Rolls-Royce Phantom that just flew out of the portal was caught off guard and knocked out a middle-aged magician. I said ... Aren't you a professional racer? Levi's said speechlessly. Johnny was a little embarrassed, and he was silent for a while before answering ... Maybe not in the magic world. 35. Get out of the car and have a look. Be careful with cheating. I won't help you. Levi's crossed his arms and looked irrelevant. Johnny lifted the Ghost Rider transformation, and the car returned to its original form. However, as soon as he got out of the car, he was surrounded by a group of magicians. There are dark creatures invading the holy place. Not only the magician shouted, but 523 figures flashed over in an instant. It really is the breath of the devil. That thing is really the ghost of you, and now you dare to break into the holy place. It is too arrogant. The middle-aged magician, who was flying, rushed out of the garbage bag on the side and looked at Johnny angrily. Wait, it was an accident. We came to Sorcerer Supreme for help. Johnny waved his hand and tried to explain. Accidental? Let's go back to hell and tell Mephitos. My mission is to send you back. After the middle-aged magician finished speaking, 2 more magic swords appeared in his hands with a flick of his hands, and then he slashed towards Ghost Rider. Who said that magicians' melee weapons are a bit funny, but the power is not to be underestimated. Johnny, who didn't transform into Ghost Rider, was definitely not an opponent. He rolled to dodge the sword. Immediately afterwards, a purple light flashed across the blade, and the entire front of the Rolls-Royce Phantom was cut in half. Hey, this is my car. Levi's was a little angry that the Rolls-Royce Phantom he had built with great difficulty was just scrapped. Want to send me to hell? Let's try it then. Johnny was also a little angry, and saw that he directly transformed into Ghost Rider, and then pulled out 2 crimson iron chains from his body and threw them, and the ground was instantly melted into 2 ravines. Just like with Thor, you must never let him drop his hammer in front of Ghost Rider. You must not say let him go to hell, because every Ghost Rider hates Mephitos very much, and even Johnny's temper is so good and he is detonated. Devil go to hell. The middle-aged magician didn't even realize that he had angered Ghost Rider, still shouting for Johnny to go to hell, and then charged up with 2 magic swords. Bang bang, bang bang. The sound of the collision between the magic sword and the iron chain came one after another. Unexpectedly, the strength of the middle-aged magician in front of him was not bad, and he even fought back and forth with Johnny. As expected, he is a notorious demon. His strength is indeed strong, but this is a holy place. The middle-aged magician gasped heavily and then looked around, only to see that they were all surrounded by magicians. Cough. I think it's all a misunderstanding. This is still Levi's and cannot continue to watch the play. HMPH, the humans who are with the devil are not good people. They must be the fallen. The middle-aged magician glanced at him and said, it seems that it's impossible not to teach you a lesson. Levi's also has a temper, and being so provocative by others, he appears to be bullied without teaching the other party a lesson. And just after he finished speaking, the magicians around him took a step forward in unison. Yohi, the one who is not afraid of death, will take another step forward. Levi's folded his arms and looked at the magicians with disdain. He couldn't believe it. Was he really not afraid of death? However, the surrounding magicians did not talk nonsense. Chi-Chi took another step forward. Levi's is speechless. Are all magicians so shameless? So many people plan to fight? Hey, can you do it? Johnny on the side was also a little speechless. What about the one-on-one fight? So suddenly there was a gang fight. Cut. You think I'm you? Men can't say number. Levi's shook his head disdainfully, and said with a snap of his fingers. Snapped. A strange force spread out, and the next moment, green vines suddenly grew under the feet of the many magicians present. The vine grows very fast, but it is as tall as a person in the blink of an eye, and these vines quickly bind the surrounding magicians after they grow. Oh God, what's up now? I'm stuck, help me. Damn, these vines are so hard that the magic sword can't cut them. Everyone be careful, don't get tangled by the vines. A few quick reacting old magicians dodged the tangle of vines, but these vines seemed to be everywhere, dodging one after another. Soon all the magicians present were tightly bound by vines. The middle-aged magician was also tightly bound by the vines. He looked at Levi's and said through gritted teeth, "Damn, I didn't expect you to be a magician, and you are a magician who has fallen into darkness. Hey, can't you just listen to me?" Levi's shook his head helplessly, then took out the magic badge he got from Ancient One and handed it to the middle-aged magician. "Look, you should know this thing. This is a high-level magician badge of the Priory, only available to disciples of the predecessor Sorcerer Supreme. Where on earth did you get it? 35. When the middle-aged magician saw this badge, his first reaction was the badge that Levi's got after killing the Holy Place magician. But after thinking about it, it is impossible, because there are not many people who have this badge. After all, there are only a few disciples of the Ancient One magician. Are you a disciple of Sorcerer Supreme? The middle-aged magician asked in disbelief. That's about it. Levi's nodded. At least Ancient One taught him how to control the Phoenix, so he was his master. Because Sorcerer Supreme Ancient One had a hunch that he was going to leave and had no time to teach me. He asked me to come to the Holy Place to find a new Sorcerer Supreme. I see, so what about this demon? The middle-aged magician still looked suspicious. He is Ghost Rider, and he sought the help of the new Sorcerer Supreme because he wanted to escape the control of the Lord of Hell. Levi's explained it briefly. The middle-aged magician frowned when he heard the words and believed a little in his heart. The young man in front of him did not seem to have an evil aura, and his strength was so powerful. There is no explanation other than being a disciple of the former Sorcerer Supreme. I believe you. At least this magic badge is not fake. Let us all go. The middle-aged magician nodded, and finally chose to believe him. Levi's mouth curled slightly when he saw this, and then clicked his fingers again. In an instant, the vines on everyone disappeared, and the magicians still stood in place without any change. This scene made all the magicians look horrified. Is it illusion? The middle-aged magician said with a shocked expression. That's right. Levi's nodded with a smile. He just used an illusion to make people mistakenly think that he was entangled in vines. In fact, they didn't move half a step at all. The middle-aged magician took a deep breath. I now very much believe that you are a disciple of the former Sorcerer Supreme. With such a powerful illusion, it can instantly pull all the hundreds of magicians around into the illusion, and no one can see the flaw. No one can do this kind of magic except his predecessor, Sorcerer Supreme. By the way, my name is Levi's. This magician can now take us to Kamar-Taj. Levi's looked at the middle-aged magician in front of him and said, with such extraordinary strength at such an age, the middle-aged magician in front of him would have a high status in the monastery. My name is Dennis. I'm sorry, I can't take you to Kamar-Taj, at least not now. The middle-aged magician shook his head and said, Why? Levi's frowned. I heard you say that thing just now. Did something happen to Kamar-Taj? Dennis frowned, and after a moment of silence, he said, Since Lisa is a former disciple of Sorcerer Supreme, I won't hide it from you. Have you heard of the Book of Cagliostro? Levi's thought for a moment and said, I heard Sorcerer Supreme say something. The Book of Cagliostro, also known as the Book of Cagliostro, records the personal history of the great magician Cagliostro and his vast knowledge. There are also various mysterious knowledge collected, including some black magic knowledge from the Dark God Book. That's right. Dennis nodded and said, This magician has been stolen again, and this time it wasn't a page or two, but the entire book was stolen. So now the entire Kamar-Taj is under martial law, and ... And what? Levi's demanded. Dennis frowned and continued, and now the holy place in New York is not safe. After the Book of Cagliostro was stolen, the entire magic world began to have magicians all the time. At first we thought that the black magicians hiding in the dark took advantage of the death of the predecessor Sorcerer Supreme and the new Sorcerer Supreme had not grown up to make trouble, but we quickly rejected this speculation, because the black magician this side actually died more. So that's the case. That is to say, you think the person who stole the Book of Cagliostro is the same person who hunted the magician? Levi's thought while rubbing his chin. That's right. Every time the evil magician kills a white magician or a black magician, it will brutally take away all their magic power and soul. As Dennis said, the other magicians on the side carried a few dry corpses out. This evil magician's methods are very cruel, and more importantly, what is he trying to do with so many souls and magic power in the Western Zhou dynasty? Speaking of which, Dennis' face became solemn. Generally speaking, it is also a cruel magic, and the more powerful it is. Not to mention this black magic that requires the collection of other magician souls and magic. If you don't find this evil magician as soon as possible, you will be in trouble when you have enough souls to collect. Are you sure this evil magician is still in New York? Levi's asked suddenly. Dennis nodded. Don't worry about this. New York's holy place not only has magic detection effect. In order to prevent the invasion of evil existences from other dimensions, New York's holy place has a very strong space restriction. As long as it is activated, no one can use the portal to leave. And a magician was killed not too long ago, so the evil magician never left the holy place of New York. 35. The three holy places are the masterpieces of the Sorcerer Supreme in all dynasties. It can be said that the whole holy place is a powerful instrument with very powerful ability. Even if Dormammu wants to invade the Earth, it must be approved by the three holy places. In that case, let me help you find this evil magician, Levi said with a smile. You? Dennis frowned. The evil magician has mastered a way to evade magic detection, so using magic is useless at all. Who told you I was going to use magic? Levi shrugged helplessly. He didn't know magic at all. The illusion just now was just a super ability. Not using magic? Dennis was stunned for a moment. Anyway, it's up to me. 35. Levi's didn't explain much, and saw that he closed his eyes, and the telepathy instantly enveloped the whole of New York. Normal people are telepathically white, while mutants are red. Levi's noticed that the magicians beside him were blue, while Johnny was black. It is much easier to identify by color. Just remove the white, red and blue, and after removing these colors, all that's left is black. If he guessed correctly, black represents the power of darkness. The hellfire used by Johnny is black, and the magicians who also practiced black magic are also black. Only need to find the black human, then you will be able to find the target. Coincidentally, a black figure was not far from them. Found it. 39. Levi's opened his eyes suddenly. What? Dennis still didn't respond. I said, found that evil magician. Levi's reluctantly repeated. Dennis was a little stunned when he heard the words. Just stand there and close your eyes and open to find the evil magician. What a joke. Come with me. Levi's didn't bother to explain further, and then walked in one direction. Dennis frowned and finally believed him. If the person in front of him was an evil magician, he could have wiped them all out just now, instead of conspiracy. Thinking of this, Dennis waved his hand, and many magicians followed behind him. At the same time, in a remote alley, a young magician kept running away like a frightened bird. From time to time he looked behind him, as if something terrifying was chasing him. GG. If you can't escape, let us take away your soul. Behind the young magician, three people in black robes whose faces could not be seen were closely following him. Seeing the distance between the two sides getting closer and closer, the young magician was terrified and regretted at the same time. I regret why I don't take the class seriously and why I don't learn more magic. Otherwise, they would not be in such a predicament now. Chapter 125. Baron Mordo. Behind the scenes. When he thought that behind him was the evil magician who was making chaos in the holy place during this time, his heart kept trembling. Once caught, not only will the magic be drained, but the soul will also be taken away. Every time I think of this, the young magician's footsteps are a little faster. Run away. Just run to a place where there are many magicians and you will be safe. However, just when the young magician thought so, one of the black robes suddenly flashed and stood in front of him. Damn! How could it be? The young magician looked at the evil magician who suddenly appeared in front of him in disbelief. GG. When hunters are hunting, they always like to play with their prey. How can they not be surprised? The black-robed magician in front of him said with a hoarse smile. When the young magician heard this, his face was full of despair. It turned out that he couldn't catch up just now because the other party was just playing around with him. Stop playing, take his soul quickly, and retreat. Let the holy place magicians find out that we are not good minus. Another black-robed magician urged. GG. No problem. The black-robed magician smiled strangely, and then extended his hand to young Happy. The young magician could only close his eyes in despair. Yet at this moment, found you. A sudden sound appeared in the alley. The three black-robed magicians were startled, then looked up. I saw that on the other side of the alley, a group of magicians had gathered around. Seeing this, the three magicians in black robes turned around and were ready to run away, but they found that there were also a group of magicians surrounding them. You can't escape. Dennis sneered. In fact, he was also very surprised, and when he came over just now, he thought that Levi's was just joking. They gathered everyone's strength in the holy place of New York to find no evil magician. Levi's came up and said that the evil magician has been found? What are you kidding? However, it wasn't until Levi's directed them to block the alley that Dennis realized he was wrong. The evil magician who kills and steals souls was found so easily. This is really incredible. How did you find this place? One of the black-robed magician panicked when he saw that all the escape routes were blocked. Master Dennis, the young magician, who had been waiting to die, saw that so many magicians had come, and immediately ran over excitedly. Evil magician, tell me how many of you are there? Dennis said coldly. The three magicians in black robes looked grimmily to the left and right, as if they were looking for time to escape. They did not have the habit of answering the enemy's questions. You can't escape. Dennis waved his hand, and the three black-robed magicians were instantly surrounded by more than a dozen holy place magicians, followed by a group fight. Looking at Levi's, he shook his head. The magician in this holy place in New York was so rascal, he would fight in groups at every turn. Soon the three black-robed magicians were caught, and their hoods were lifted. The three of them, 2 men and 1 woman, because of the black magic practiced by the evil side. Their appearances have also become ferocious and terrifying, and they will definitely scare dead men when they go out. Come on, how many people are there in the evil magician, and what is your purpose in collecting souls? Dennis kept pressing. Humphrey. The 3 black-robed magicians were also tough, and had no plans to say anything at all. Before Dennis couldn't ask him, Levi's came out. "Don't waste your time, let me do it." "You?" 35. Dennis hesitated, but remembering his status as a disciple of the Sorcerer Supreme and finding these evil magicians, he agreed immediately. Then, "Brother, come here." "Brother?" Levi's gave him a somewhat surprised look, but didn't care too much. Then he looked at the three black-robed magicians, and directly used telepathy to obtain the information in the minds of the three. "So it is." The corners of Levi's mouth curled slightly, and he didn't want to say why the three were killed. It turned out that a curse had been released by the employer. "If they dare to say it, I am afraid they will turn into pus and blood and die immediately." Thinking of this, he waved to Dennis. "Get rid of these three people, I already know the cause and effect." 39. "Really?" Dennis was a little surprised, but he still waved the three black-robed magicians away. Seeing Dennis' puzzled eyes, Levi's took the initiative to explain. "Actually, there is only one evil magician, and these three are just black magicians who were cursed by the evil magician, so they would go all out to help him collect magician souls." "Then who is this evil magician?" Dennis asked suspiciously. Levi's shook his head when he heard the words. "The three of them don't know the true face of the evil magician, nor the exact location of the evil magician, but I felt an evil aura appear." "Where?" Dennis frowned. "Just come with me." Levi's didn't explain much. The other side. Jonathan Pangborn at the moment is humming a little tune, busy in his auto repair shop. He's in a good mood and has been very happy every day since he was half paralyzed in a car accident and then went to Kamar-Taj to learn magic and get back on his feet. Maybe it's only after losing it that you know how to cherish it. Just before leaving Kamar-Taj, the fact that Sorcerer Supreme asked him to lead a very annoying person to Kamar-Taj made him a little confused. He once came to seek medical treatment because he was partially paralyzed, but was turned away. Stephen Strange, he will never forget the name. But it doesn't matter. His life is very good now, and there is no need to care about the past. Only to his surprise was news from friends in the wizarding world that Stephen Strange had become the new Sorcerer Supreme. The news shocked him a little, but it didn't make him care too much. After all, the two were no longer in the same circle. Just as Pangborn was thinking about these things and working, suddenly there were footsteps coming from the door. "Need something?" Pangborn asked without looking back. "I heard that you were carried on." The Kamar-Taj question mark 39. Hearing a slightly familiar voice, Pangborn looked back subconsciously, and saw a man in a black robe standing behind him. Senior Brother Mordo? Appearing behind Pangborn was one of the former disciples of the Ancient One magician, Baron Mordo. "Brother Mordo, I remember Kamar-Taj's magician said you were missing. Why did you suddenly appear here?" Pangborn asked suspiciously. "All this time, I've been out and about." 35. Baron Mordo replied, and then started talking about his own experience during this time. "And during this trip, there has always been a question that I can't figure out how to answer, and it was not until I met an old man that I finally got the answer I wanted." Having said this, Baron Mordo looked at him and asked, "Pangborn, do you know what the problem is that puzzles me?" "What is it?" 35. Pangborn frowned, and he suddenly realized that something was wrong with Senior Brother Mordo in front of him, and he didn't look like the Mordo he knew before. "My question is, what is the purpose of the magician?" When Baron Mordo said this question, the whole person became a little confused. "The teacher once told me that the essence of magician is to observe nature, understand law, and then draw strength from multiple dimensions to repair the damaged law. But the old man told me that the real purpose of magician is to distort the original shape of things and steal magic from them, which is against the law." 99. So magician is the biggest lawbreaker, a thief who uses the loopholes in law to extract the energy of nature, just like you. At the end, Baron Mordo pointed at Pangborn with an angry face. "I didn't steal the magic, that was mine." Pangborn shook his head, still vigilant in his heart. Even if he is stupid, he can see that Mordo is a bad comer. "A thief does not call himself a thief." 35. Baron Mordo sneered, and came to Pangborn's body in an instant, grabbing his abdomen with one hand. Although Pangborn was still very vigilant, he never thought that Mordo would attack. With a scream, he was directly hit in the abdomen without any resistance. "That's the power you steal." As Mordo said, he grabbed it with one hand, and the magic power in Pangborn was instantly sucked out. "Damn, why did you take my power?" Pangborn looked at Baron Mordo angrily and asked. He was originally half paralyzed, but it was because he had the power of magician that he stood up again. After losing his strength, Pangborn instantly collapsed to the ground, unable to move. Baron Mordo replied with a sneer, "Because I have discovered the fundamental reason why this world is becoming more and more twisted and twisted. That is, there are too many magicians, so I want to reduce the number of magicians in this world." Clap clap clap. Suddenly applause appeared in the room. Baron Mordo stood up suddenly, only to find that there were 3 more people beside them. "Who are you?" "I found that there are quite a lot of people in this world who want high family planning. I only knew about Thanos before, but I didn't expect you, Baron Mordo, to be the pioneer." Levi said while applauding. "Senior Brother Mordo, I didn't expect it to be you. Dennis looked at Mara in astonishment. I could feel the dark breath on him. That was disgusting. Johnny couldn't help frowning when he felt the dark breath on Mordo. Just now, Levi's, based on the cursed power of the 3 black-robed magicians, found someone with the same aura in this small shop in New York. So I took Dennis and Johnny to use the space move and came here directly. I didn't expect to see Mordo seize the power of the magician. Mordo, I didn't expect that the evil magician who killed the magician to steal his power and soul would be you? Exclamation mark 99. Dennis, who had reacted, finally understood. No matter how much he thought, he never thought that the main messenger behind all this was actually Sorcerer Supreme's disciple Mordo. Because this is my mission, I didn't expect that you have fallen into the company of demons, which is really disappointing. Mira looked at Dennis coldly. You don't have to worry about this, it's all arranged by Sorcerer Supreme. 35. Dennis said angrily. Seeking flowers. Sure enough, the Ancient One has also fallen. Shut up, you have no right to say that, Sorcerer Supreme. Dennis couldn't bear it any longer, and he charged with a magic sword in each of his hands. Not to be outdone, Baron Mordo rushed up with a magic sword in both hands. Bang bang, clang clang. It was obviously 2 magicians fighting, but those who didn't know it thought it was 2 berserkers with double swords. Although Dennis is not a disciple of Ancient One, his status in Kamar-Taj is not low, and he is very familiar with Baron Mordo. However, what surprised Dennis was that the strength of Mordo in front of him was not the same as the Mordo in his memory, and the one in front of him was much weaker. In just a few rounds, Baron Mordo was stabbed in the heart by Dennis's sword. Ha 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 tilde. It seems that your strength has improved a lot during this time. Mordo, whose heart was pierced, had a weird smile on his face. No, you are not Mordo at all. His strength can't be so weak. Dennis finally reacted. GG tilde. After Mordo smiled strangely, he saw huge amounts of changes in his body and appearance, and then a strange man appeared in front of them. Dennis' complexion suddenly changed greatly. This is puppet magic? You actually learned this forbidden magic, and you really stole the Book of Cagliostro. GG tilde. When Dennis meets next time, I will personally get rid of you. Look forward to our meeting again. After speaking, the body of the puppet controlled by Baron Mordo fell directly, and changed into a dry corpse in the blink of an eye. Damn, Mordo isn't here. Dennis clenched his fists and said angrily. The evil magician that has been making him scorched all the time, turned out to be a puppet magic of Morton, which made his face extremely ugly. Since it is Mordo's puppet in the holy place in New York, there may even be more puppets in other places. No, I have to go back to Kamar-Taj and tell the new Sorcerer Supreme about it. Otherwise, with Mordo's familiarity with Kamar-Taj, it would be bad if he did something crazy. 35. Dennis said with an ugly expression. Then we're on our way, Levi said, looking at him. Dennis looked at him and then at Johnny, and finally nodded. If you want to go to Kamar-Taj, it's absolutely fine. After this series of things, he also trusts Levi's, the former disciple of Sorcerer Supreme. Well, let's go back to the holy place in New York before it's too late. Levi's grabbed the shoulders of the 2, ready to use the space to move. Wait first. Take Pangborn with you too, Dennis said, looking at Pangborn who was paralyzed not far away. Well then, you catch him. 35. Levi's said nonchalantly. Dennis grabbed Pangborn's arm upon hearing this. The next moment, the 4 disappeared into the small shop. Back at the holy place in New York again, Dennis was still very shocked. Senior brother, that, huh? Say something, Levi's said strangely. I want to know why senior brother can use the portal. 33. Dennis wanted to ask this question just now. Obviously, the holy place in New York is still open. It stands to reason that all magicians cannot use the portal. Portal? I'm not a portal, Levi's replied with a smile. Dennis was stunned for a moment when he heard the words, what is not a portal? In his understanding, only portals can carry out space teleportation. I'm calling this space movement, and you can tell by the name, Levi's explained. Dennis was a little confused when he heard the words, and didn't understand the difference between teleportation and space movement. However, he did not continue to ask, and only regarded it as a powerful magic that Sorcerer Supreme gave him alone. Soon Dennis brought Levi's and the others to the holy place in New York. You can see that in the hall on the 2nd floor, there are 3 mirrors that are as high as one person. These 3 mirrors lead to the other 2 holy places and Kamar-Taj respectively. Then Dennis came to the mirror leading to Kamar-Taj in the middle and reached out his hand to activate the teleportation channel. However, the passage leading to Kamar-Taj did not appear to have been open for a long time. What's the matter? Did something happen to Kamar-Taj? Dennis frowned and continued to try to activate the teleportation channel, but there was still no response. What's the matter? Johnny asked, frowning. Damn, the transmission channel on Kamar-Taj's side is blocked, Dennis said anxiously. Did Mordo do it? Levi's asked suspiciously. No, it should be Kamar-Taj who took the initiative to close the access to the inside, but under normal circumstances Kamar-Taj would not take the initiative to disconnect from the outside world. Dennis said solemnly. In other words, something really happened on Kamar-Taj's side, and it's very likely that the initiator was Mordo. Levis put his hands on his chest and touched his chin. Hearing his words, Dennis also fell silent. Obviously he thought so too. At this time, the other magicians in the hall also became restless. If you like this audiobook, subscribe the channel for more videos like this. And join my Patreon if you want to support me. Link is in the description. Leave some comment and let me know if you guys like this story, or you have a web novel you like and want to hear its audiobook. I will be happy to create them for you. Please like, share, and leave a comment on the video.